Chapter 1. My name is Chen Minh Khai, but on my Hong Kong papers, I was known as Chen Minh Khai. My official job was an inspector in the special unit of the Hong Kong Royal Police in charge of unexplainable cases. My unit didn't exist in the official organizational chart, wasn't on paper, and naturally, no one acknowledged its existence. I write these lines in 2023, having been retired for over 2 decades in a small apartment in Taipei. Memories of the 1990s in Hong Kong are sometimes so vivid that I can't distinguish between past and present. The cases I investigated were never made public, not for political or national security reasons, but simply because no one wanted to acknowledge they had happened. 30 years ago, I was a young, enthusiastic police officer, completely skeptical of the supernatural. I believed in science, logic, and what could be proven. But then, on a rainy night in July 1991, I was assigned to investigate a strange suicide at a cultural building in Kowloon, where I witnessed the unexplainable. A man was dragged through a mirror, leaving his lower body still standing on the floor. Afterward, I was summoned by Chief Inspector Leung, a man around 55 with sharp eyes that had seen too much darkness, to a small office in the basement of the Central Police Station. "Do you believe in ghosts, Tran?" he asked, cigar smoke curling around his yellowed fingers. "No, sir," I replied, still carrying the scent of the crime scene. "Good," he nodded, "then you're the right man for Unit S." Unit S, unofficially known as the Supernatural Unit, was officially called the Special Task Force for Unconventional Case Investigations. There were only 4 of us: Chief Inspector Leung, a former soldier who had fought in Korea, Dr. Yip, a young forensic pathologist and psychologist, Master Wang, an elderly expert in Feng Shui, Taoism, and all things spiritual, and me, a young police officer who had just witnessed the unexplainable. Our office was in the basement of an old building in Pak Fu Lam Bay, far from the main headquarters, where no one paid us any mind. We received orders directly from a deputy commissioner who only appeared via phone. Our files were stored in a triple-locked safe, and our case numbers always began with an X. The first rule Leung told me on my first day was never to admit what we saw to anyone outside the unit. The second rule, never record supernatural details in official reports. And the third rule, always carry salt. I laughed when I heard the third rule until I understood why. For the first year, I only observed. In the second year, I started leading some small investigations. By the third year, I had become the unit's lead inspector, after Leung was seriously injured during an investigation at an ancient temple on Lantau Island. He remained the head of the unit, but most of the field work shifted to me. In 7 years, from 1991 to 1997, the year Hong Kong was handed over to China, I investigated 127 cases. 17 of them remain unforgettable, even 3 decades later. Sometimes on rainy July nights, I still wake up to whispers from the dark corners of the room or the feeling of someone staring at me from behind the mirror. Tonight, I decided to write down those cases, not for anyone to believe, but simply so they wouldn't be forgotten. Because, after all, the line between truth and fiction is thinner than we think, and there are dark corners of this world that modern science has yet to illuminate. And if you are reading these lines, please remember, never watch unlabeled VHS tapes, never look into a mirror at midnight, and especially, never believe that the footsteps you hear behind you on a quiet street late at night are just your imagination. Because sometimes, fear comes from knowing that this world holds things beyond our comprehension. These are my X cases. Chapter 2. The first case I want to recount happened in the winter of 1991, just a few months after I joined Unit S, in the Mong Kok district. Back then, it was still a bustling neighborhood with illicit video stores and dingy cafes. A series of mysterious deaths occurred consecutively, all sharing a strange commonality. The victims died of asphyxiation with marks on their necks, as if strangled by a thin cord. At that time, Chief Inspector Leung was still guiding me on cases, and I was assigned to assist in the investigation under his supervision. The first to report the case was Mr. Zhang, the owner of a small VHS rental shop located in a narrow alley. He discovered his third tape renter dead in his apartment, just a few blocks from the shop. "Inspector, I'm not superstitious," Mr. Zhang told me when I arrived at his shop, "but there's something wrong with that tape." He showed me his rental ledger. 3 people in 3 days had all rented the same tape titled Red Lantern, a historical drama that, according to Mr. Zhang, had been gathering dust on the shelf for years. "It wasn't a popular movie," he explained. "I don't even remember when I acquired it. But last week, Mr. Liu, the first victim, saw it on the shelf and said he remembered watching it in the 1970s. The next day, I heard he died. The next 2, a college student and a middle-aged woman, also died under similar circumstances after renting the tape." "I want to see that tape," I said. Mr. Zhang shook his head, his face pale. "I threw it away, but this morning it appeared back on the shelf." We went to the tape shelf where Mr. Zhang pointed. An old, faded dark red VHS box with a picture of a classical Chinese lantern. No director or actor names were listed on the cover. "Do you have a VCR?" I asked. Mr. Zhang led me to a small room behind the shop where he usually checked tapes before renting them. Dr. Yeep, my forensic colleague, joined us after examining the last renter's autopsy. "I advise you not to watch it, Inspector," Mr. Zhang said, his voice trembling. "I have a bad feeling about it." "It's my job," I replied, keeping my voice calm, though a cold sensation began to run down my spine. "But you don't have to stay." Yeep glanced at me. "Are you really going to watch it?" "We have to find out what's happening," I replied, "if there's a connection between this tape and the deaths." "In all 3 cases," Yeep said professionally, "the victims died of asphyxiation with ligature marks on their necks as if from a rope. But," she paused. "But what?" "The wounds have a strange shape I've never seen before. It's like a coiled VHS tape." Mr. Zhang shuddered and backed out of the room. "I'll wait outside." I inserted the tape into the VCR and pressed play. The screen showed only static for a few seconds, then scenes from an ancient Chinese period drama appeared. The footage was blurry, colors faded, as if it had been played over and over. The film depicted an aristocratic family during the Qing dynasty, living in a large mansion adorned with red lanterns. The scene showed a young woman in a red kippah sitting before a mirror, combing her hair. There was no sound, only images. "Is it a silent film?" Yeep whispered. I shook my head. "No, this film is from the 60s or 70s. It should have sound." Suddenly, the image on the screen became distorted. When it stabilized again, the woman was no longer sitting before the mirror. Instead, she stood in the middle of a dark room, staring directly into the camera, her eyes bloodshot, her skin unnaturally pale. The scene cut quickly to a window frame where a figure hung suspended, a red lantern swaying beside it. "Is there a problem with the tape?" I said, moving to turn off the VCR, but Yeep grabbed my arm. "Wait," she said, her eyes fixed on the screen. "Look." The footage returned to the woman, but now she was hanging from the window frame, her red kippah contrasting with her pale skin. Her eyes were wide open, staring directly into the camera, and her lips moved as if speaking something. A chill ran down my spine as the image abruptly cut to a close-up of the woman's face. Her eyes stared directly into mine, and I felt as if she could see through the screen, deep into my soul. Suddenly, the VCR vibrated violently, and the tape ejected. The magnetic tape from the VHS reel began to automatically unspool from the box, coiling in the air like a black snake. "What the hell?" I cried, stepping back. Yeep gripped my arm. "Get out of here now." We rushed out of the room and slammed the door shut. Through the crack, I saw the VHS tape writhing in the air before coiling into a perfect noose. Master Wang, our spiritual expert, arrived an hour later. After assessing the situation, he sealed the tape in a wooden box inscribed with talismans and placed it in a bag of salt. "This is a haunted object possessed by a vengeful spirit," Master Wang explained. "It seems the woman's spirit has become bound to this tape and seeks to kill those who watch it, perhaps for revenge for her death." "But why these people?" I asked. "What connection do they have to her?" Master Wang shook his head. "Vengeful spirits don't need reasons, they just need a channel to unleash their hatred. The tape is a portal between her world and ours." We destroyed that tape, or at least we tried. Fire couldn't burn it, water couldn't damage it. Finally, we buried it in an iron box filled with salt, deep within Tin House Cemetery. I never found out who the woman in the tape was or why her spirit became bound to a VHS tape. But since then, I've never watched a strange tape again. And every time I pass an old video rental store, I feel a cold gaze following me from behind the dusty plastic boxes. Chapter 3. After the Red Lantern VHS tape case, I began to gain experience within Unit S. By 1992, Chief Inspector Leung had entrusted me with more responsibility in investigations, with support from Dr. Yeep and Master Wang. Master Wang, our spiritual expert, was always an important consultant, but he rarely appeared at crime scenes unless absolutely necessary. He often said that my intuition was more sensitive when away from the source of malevolent energy. The second case I want to recount occurred in the spring of 1992 at a location locals called Bride's Pool, located in the New Territories near the border with mainland China. It was a small lake nestled deep in a valley, surrounded by ancient banyan trees and dense bamboo forests. The water's surface was always calm, creating the impression of a giant mirror reflecting the sky. I was called to the scene on a foggy March morning. A young couple, Li Jiahui and Zhang Jingnai, had gone to the lake for a weekend camping trip. The next morning, Li Jiahui was found floating on the lake's surface, his face purple, eyes wide open. Zhang Jingnai had disappeared, leaving only a red wedding dress draped over a banyan tree branch on the lake shore. A double case, Chief Inspector Leung said over the phone as I drove to the scene. One dead, one missing, but something's not right. What do you mean? We found Zhang Jingnai's diary. She wrote that they came here not for ordinary camping, they came to take wedding photos. Wedding photos in such a desolate place. It seems Li Jia, who heard a local legend that if you take wedding photos at Bride's Pool on the exact day of Kixi Festival, the marriage will last forever. But the problem is, yesterday wasn't Kixi Festival. When I arrived, the search team was scouring the area for Zhang Jingnai. Li Jiahui's body had been brought ashore, covered by a white sheet. Dr. Yeep was kneeling beside it, examining the body. Find anything? I asked, approaching. Yeep looked up, her eyes hidden behind her medical glasses. He drowned, but there are a few strange points. No signs of struggle, and the body has an unusual coldness, much lower than the lake water temperature. I looked down at the body. Li Jiahui's skin was unnaturally pale, almost blue, his fingernails and lips a dark purple. But what caught my attention most were his wide-open eyes, as if he had seen something horrific before he died. Where's the dress? I asked. A police officer pointed towards the large banyan tree on the lake shore. We've sealed it as evidence. A deep red wedding dress was hanging in a large plastic bag. The bright red silk fabric had intricate golden dragon and phoenix motifs, an expensive traditional Chinese wedding dress. Did you find any other clothes belonging to Zhang Jingnai? I asked. No, Inspector, only this dress. I looked out at the lake, its surface unnervingly calm. Not a ripple, even with a gentle breeze. The ancient banyan trees reflected on the lake's surface, forming a perfect inverted world. Who found them? I asked. A local fisherman, the officer replied. He said he came here to fish early this morning and discovered the body floating on the lake. Where is he now? Waiting in the car, he's quite shaken. I went to the police car where an elderly man sat trembling, even though it wasn't cold. He was about 70, with a wrinkled face and cloudy eyes. Mr. Chen, I called, using my identification card. I'm Inspector Tran from the Special Unit. Can you tell me exactly what you saw this morning? Mr. Chen looked at me, his old eyes full of fear. Inspector, I know you won't believe me, but this isn't the first time this has happened. What do you mean? I've lived here my whole life. This lake has a legend. Every 7 years, the bride of the lake appears to find a new husband. I tried to keep a neutral expression, the bride of the lake. In 1963, a young woman named Lam Yuk Ying was about to get married. It was said her fiancé betrayed her with her younger sister. In despair, she put on her wedding dress and jumped into the lake, committing suicide. Since then, every 7 years, she reappears to find a new man. but she takes their flesh to nourish her wedding dress. I took careful notes. You said this isn't the first time. Can you tell me about other instances? 1970, 1977, 1984, 1991, and now 2023. Every 7 years, always in March, always a young couple. The man is always found in the lake, and the woman always disappears, leaving only a red dress. I looked back at the lake, feeling a chill run down my spine. And what exactly did you see this morning? I came to the lake at dawn to fish. When the first sunlight touched the water, I saw a red shape underwater. At first, I thought it was the sun's reflection, but when I looked closer, the old man trembled, I saw a girl in a red wedding dress pulling him deeper. She looked up directly into my eyes, half her face had no flesh, only bone. I decided to dive into the lake to search for Zhang Jingnai. Although a professional dive team had been called, I didn't want to wait. With the help of the local rescue team, I borrowed a wetsuit and began my search. The lake water was unusually cold, and the deeper I dove, the more I felt an invisible pressure, as if something didn't want me to go down. Visibility underwater was quite good, and when I dove about 10 meters, I saw a strange shape near the bottom of the lake. It wasn't Zhang Jingnai, but a human skeleton still wearing torn red fabric. The skeleton seemed to be anchored to the lake bed by seaweed, and around it, a faint red glow emanated from the fabric itself. As I swam closer, I realized with horror that the skeleton was moving. It turned its head towards me, its bony fingers reaching out as if to touch me. I quickly swam backward, but suddenly felt a strong tug on my leg. I looked down and saw a pale, fleshy hand gripping my ankle. It wasn't a skeletal hand, but a real, fleshed hand. Zhang Jingnai's hand. She was below me, pulling me down, her eyes wide with despair and her mouth open as if screaming. Though no sound could be heard in the water, I struggled violently and broke free, rocketing to the surface, my heart pounding. When I was pulled ashore, I gasped, "Zhang Jingnai is down there, she's still alive." The dive team was sent down immediately, but they found nothing. No Zhang Jingnai, no skeleton, nothing but water and mud. "Are you sure?" Yeep asked once I had calmed down. "I saw her," I insisted, "and a skeleton in a red wedding dress. It was moving." Chief Inspector Leung then consulted with Master Wang, who suggested we have the red wedding dress tested. The results stunned us all. The bright red color on the dress was not dye. It was human blood, still fresh, though the dress was no longer dripping. "It absorbs blood," Master Wang explained as he examined the dress. "The bride's spirit has become bound to the dress. She uses the blood and flesh of the men to sustain the dress, keeping it perpetually red." "And the women?" I asked. "They become a part of her," Master Wang said, his voice lowering. "Their souls are trapped in the lake so she can use their bodies to access new men." The dress was eventually sealed in a sandalwood box and buried beneath an ancient temple. Bride's pool was officially declared dangerous and off-limits to the public, citing water pollution. But on moonlit nights, people still occasionally see a red reflection on the lake's surface and hear the faint weeping of a young girl echoing through the valley. Chapter 4. After the Red Bride of the Lake case, Chief Inspector Leung began to trust me with more complex investigations, even allowing me to lead some under his remote supervision. I had gradually lost faith in the science and logic I once absolutely believed in. In the world of X cases, the boundary between the supernatural and reality was much thinner than I had imagined. The third case I want to recount occurred in the summer of 1992, a few months after the bride's pool incident. It was one of the rare cases where Chief Inspector Leung decided to join me at the scene, perhaps due to its complex nature. The Orchid bus route ran from central Hong Kong to the New Territories suburbs, passing through remote mountainous areas. This route saw few passengers during the day and almost none at night. However, the transport company maintained a last journey departing at 11:45 p.m., usually reaching the final stop around 1:00 a.m. Problems began when the night bus driver, Mr. Lam, a 50-year-old man who had been driving night buses for 15 years, reported a strange passenger always sitting in the back row. "It started 3 months ago," Mr. Lam recounted to me and Leung when we met him at the bus company headquarters. "Always someone in a black raincoat and a hood, boarding at Twilight Peak Station, sitting in the back, and riding all the way to the final stop. What made you think the person was strange? Leung asked calmly. Twilight Peak Station has nothing, just a deserted stretch of road in the mountains. No one lives there. And the old temple terminal is completely abandoned after midnight. There's no reason for a normal person to take that route at that hour. Did you ever talk to that passenger? I asked. Mr. Lamb shook his head. I tried once. When we reached the final stop, I said, "We've arrived, please alight." No response. When I turned to look, the seat was empty. You didn't see them leave the bus? Leung asked. No, not at all. I checked the security camera. Nothing. It was as if they vanished into thin air. Leung and I exchanged glances. This was exactly the kind of X-case our unit specialized in. Do you have another trip tonight? Leung asked. Yes, Inspector, as usual. We'll accompany you. That night, Leung and I boarded the last bus. To avoid alarming anyone, we wore plain clothes. I brought a thermal camera, which Unit S often used to detect abnormal temperature changes, a common sign of supernatural phenomena. The bus departed at 11:45 p.m. with a total of 7 passengers, including us. A man in a suit, probably a late-working office employee, a young couple whispering to each other, an elderly woman with a shopping bag, and a young man wearing headphones. How long until Twilight Peak Station? I quietly asked Leung. About 30 minutes, he replied, his eyes fixed on the front door, observing the other passengers. It might already be on the bus. As the bus left the urban area and began to climb the winding mountain roads, the other passengers gradually alighted at their stops, leaving only us and the young man with headphones. He was dozing, his head leaning against the window. Exactly at midnight, the bus stopped at Twilight Peak Station, a simple bus shelter with a small roof located on a deserted stretch of road amidst the dark mountains. There were no houses or lights around, only moonlight illuminating the road. Mr. Lamb looked into his rearview mirror and quietly said, "It's here." I turned around and saw a dark figure approaching the bus, a person in a long black raincoat, hood covering their face. They boarded the bus, paid the fare with old coins, and went straight to the back of the bus. I started filming with the thermal camera. On the screen, all the passengers showed up in red and orange, the normal colors for human body temperature, except for the figure at the back of the bus. That person appeared in dark blue, almost black, indicating an extremely low temperature, almost 0°C. Unusually cold, I whispered to Leung. He nodded, his eyes narrowed. That's it, a lingering spirit, a soul of the dead still stuck in its living habits. The bus continued its journey through the dark mountain roads. The young man with headphones woke up and alighted at a stop, leaving only us and the mysterious passenger. As the bus neared the final stop, Leung signaled for me to prepare. I quietly drew my shotgun loaded with salt rounds, one of the weapons Master Wang had prepared for us to deal with supernatural entities. Try talking to it, Leung whispered. I nodded and turned, my eyes still fixed on the thermal camera screen. Hello, where are you going? No response, the figure remained motionless. We know you no longer belong to this world, Leung said, his voice calm but authoritative. Can you tell us why you still take this bus route? This time, the figure stirred slightly. From beneath the hood, a raspy voice echoed, like wind rustling through leaves. I have to go home. Where's your home? I asked. The last stop, they're waiting. Suddenly, the bus veered sharply, leaving the main road and turning onto an unpaved dirt track not on the map. Mr. Lamb struggled with the steering wheel, but the bus seemed to have a will of its own. I can't control it, Mr. Lamb shouted. The brakes aren't working. The bus accelerated down the steep path. Headlights shone on a dilapidated old station ahead. A long-abandoned bus stop with a rusted sign reading, Old Temple Terminal. The final stop isn't here, Mr. Lamb said, his face pale. The official final stop is 2 kilometers from here. When the bus stopped at the abandoned station, the other passenger stood up and moved towards the door. As they passed us, I felt an icy chill to the bone. And for a fleeting moment, I saw beneath the hood a withered face with empty eyes and grayish skin. We're here, the voice echoed. time to get off." The bus doors opened automatically, and the passenger stepped out. From the shadows of the bus stop, other figures emerged. Dozens of them, all in black raincoats, standing still like statues. They waved, inviting us to alight. "No one gets off," Leung commanded, pulling out a Taoist talisman and beginning to chant. "The black box," I suddenly remembered. "Mr. Lam, does the bus have a black box?" "Yes," the driver replied, still struggling with the steering wheel. "Under the dashboard." I quickly found the black box and connected it to my laptop. I checked the audio recording history and discovered something. 3 months ago, at the same time the mysterious passenger began appearing, the black box recorded a Cantonese phrase I didn't understand. "Leung, listen to this," I called. Leung listened to the recording, his face slowly changing. "This is an ancient Cantonese dialect. It says, 'We're here, time to get off.'" "So what?" "That's exactly how bus drivers tell passengers when they reach the final stop." He turned to Mr. Lam. "3 months ago, did this bus have an accident?" Mr. Lam froze. "How did you know?" "Yes, one rainy night I lost control, and the bus crashed into the guardrail at the Twilight Peak curve, but no one was injured." "How many passengers were on the bus that night?" I asked, feeling goosebumps rise all over my body. 12, all left the bus safely, although I couldn't contact them afterward for statements. The police said they would contact them themselves if needed. Leung and I exchanged knowing glances. 12 passengers, exactly the number of people waiting at the ghost station. "They never left the bus," Leung said quietly. "They died in that accident, but you didn't realize their spirits still think they're on their way home." I looked out the window and realized the figures were approaching the bus. From this distance, I could see their pale faces more clearly, with empty eyes and deep wounds on their necks, as if their necks had been broken. "Still think they haven't reached their final destination," Leung murmured, "still looking for their way home." Leung quickly completed his ritual, drawing a circle of holy salt around the bus and placing talismans on the doors. The bus lights suddenly blazed, and the engine restarted. The figures outside recoiled, as if the light hurt them. "Drive now," Leung ordered, "and never stop at Twilight Peak Station again." Mr. Lam spun the bus around and sped back onto the main road. As I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw the figures dissipate like smoke. After that night, the bus company changed the route, avoiding Twilight Peak Station, and no one saw the passenger in the black raincoat again. But sometimes, night bus drivers still report hearing a voice echoing from the announcement speaker, even when the system is off. "We're here, time to get off." And on rainy October nights, if you get close to Twilight Peak Station at midnight, you might see the headlights of a bus approaching you from the fog. A bus that never arrives, and passengers who never alight. Chapter 5. After the ghost bus case, my reputation within Unit S grew. Chief Inspector Leung began entrusting me with more complex cases, even letting me lead some investigations under his remote supervision. I had gradually lost faith in the science and logic I once absolutely believed in. In the world of X cases, the boundary between the supernatural and reality was much thinner than I had imagined. The third case I want to recount occurred in the summer of 1992, a few months after the bride's pool incident. It was one of the rare cases where Chief Inspector Leung decided to join me at the scene, perhaps due to its complex nature. Apartment 4D at Nam Quang Building. The Nam Quang Building was located in the Sham Shui Po district, a working-class but well-built residential area from the late 1980s. It was a 30-story building, with 4 apartments per floor, labeled A, B, C, and D. The building's feng shui was considered quite good, situated between the Breath of the Dragon, a small range of hills behind it, and overlooking Victoria Harbor in front. Problems began with apartment 4D, on the 4th floor. In 5 years since the building was constructed, this apartment had seen 12 tenants, an alarming number. Every tenant reported severe health issues, profuse nosebleeds, headaches, and in the last 3 cases, unexplained carbon monoxide poisoning that required hospitalization. Chief Inspector Leung assigned the case to me on a drizzly May morning in 1994. "The building management company has checked all plumbing, electrical, and gas systems," he said, handing me a thick file, "but found no cause. They replaced all water heaters, stoves, and even the ventilation ducts, but the problems persisted. Could it be a structural issue? I suggested. Toxic mold in the walls, for example. They checked that, even hired environmental specialists from the US. Nothing. The apartment is perfectly clean on paper. So why do they think this is an X case? I asked skeptically. Leung handed me a photo. The most recent tenant, a software engineer named Wu Jiahui, took this photo before being hospitalized for gas poisoning. The photo showed a white wall in the apartment, nothing special at first glance. But on closer inspection, I noticed faint lines on the wall, a handprint stained with charcoal. Handprint? I asked. Not one, Leung replied. When they photographed it with a thermal camera, the entire wall was covered in handprints. And there's this. He handed me a report from the hospital. The last 3 tenants all had near-fatal levels of carboxyhemoglobin in their blood, a clear sign of co-poisoning. But when the apartment was inspected, the co levels were normal. So where did the co come from? That's what we need to find out, Leung sighed. I've asked Master Wang to join you on this case. He's waiting for you at the scene. When I arrived at Nam Quang Building, Master Wang was waiting outside, holding an old cloth bag containing his tools, a collection of talismans, small divine statues, and other spiritual items. Inspector Tran, he greeted me, his wrinkled old face smiling. This building has a serious qi problem. Qi? I asked, knowing Master Wang was referring to feng shui energy, not ordinary gas. Yes, the yin qi is too heavy, he explained as we stepped into the elevator. I felt it as soon as I entered the lobby. When the elevator reached the 4th floor, I understood what Master Wang meant. The air here seemed thicker, heavier, and carried a strange odor, like burnt charcoal. Apartment 4D was currently vacant. After the last tenant had left in a panic, the management company left the keys for us. As I opened the door, the heavy sensation became even more pronounced. Be careful how you breathe, Master Wang warned, handing me a special mask embedded with a talisman. Don't inhale too deeply. The apartment was small but well-designed, a combined living room and kitchen, a bedroom and a bathroom. Everything was clean and tidy, with no obvious signs of any problems. Master Wang walked around the apartment, occasionally stopping to feel the walls with his aged hands. He stopped at a wall in the bedroom. Here, he said, there's a hollow space in this wall. I took out my sonic wave detector, a device our unit used to detect hollow spaces in walls without destroying them. The device confirmed Master Wang's words. There was an irregular hollow space between the plaster and the concrete. We need to open it, I said. With permission from the management company, we began to carefully remove a small section of the wall. As the plaster was peeled away, a pungent odor emanated, a smell of smoldering charcoal and something even more repulsive. Stand back, Master Wang ordered, pulling a handful of salt from his bag and sprinkling it around the opening. As we enlarged the hole, what we saw astonished both of us. Inside the hollow space between the 2 layers of wall were hundreds of incense sticks, some completely burnt, others still smoldering. They had been embedded in the wet cement, forming a strange wall of incense. I've never seen this, Master Wang whispered, his eyes wide. This is a very dangerous form of ancient spell. What do these incense sticks do? I asked, feeling a headache begin to throb. They continuously produce low levels of carbon monoxide. At the same time, they also generate tainted qi, a type of negative energy that only special spirits can use. We continued to expand the opening and discovered something even more astonishing. A large talisman was plastered to the concrete, depicting a complex ancient character. Half of the talisman was burnt, revealing the cement beneath with a deep handprint, a charcoal handprint. This is a evil spirit confinement talisman, Master Wang explained, his voice trembling. An ancient spell used to imprison evil spirits, but half of the talisman has been destroyed, perhaps by the incense sticks burning too close. So what was confined in this wall? I asked, feeling a chill run down my spine. Not what, Master Wang replied, pointing to the charcoal handprint, but who? Through further investigation, we discovered that the land on which Nam Quang building was built had once been a small crematorium in the 1940s. During wartime, this site cremated thousands of bodies, including victims of torture and mass murder. According to Master Wang, some vengeful spirits had been confined within the walls of apartment 4D by an ancient sorcerer, perhaps to prevent them from disturbing the new residents. But when the talisman was partially destroyed, they gradually escaped, using the energy from the incense sticks to maintain their presence and generate carbon monoxide to harm the living. But why this apartment? I asked. Why not the others? 4D in Cantonese is a homophone for death, Master Wang explained. Floor 4, apartment D both are linked to death. This is the weakest point, feng shui-wise, in the entire building. It's where the membrane between the world of the living and the dead is thinnest. With Master Wang's help, we performed a complex purification ritual. The entire hollow space in the wall was cleaned. The incense sticks were removed and destroyed, and a new, more powerful talisman was placed in the old one's position. This will keep them at peace, Master Wang said when the ritual was complete, but I cannot guarantee it will last forever. The management company decided to completely renovate apartment 4D, changing its layout so that the space no longer resembled its original design. They even renamed the apartment to 4E, hoping this would break the link with the ominous past. For the next year, there were no reports of problems in the apartment, and the new tenants, a young couple, seemed to live quite happily. But on rainy nights, some residents still reported smelling smoldering incense wafting through the fourth-floor hallway. And sometimes, from the walls of apartment 4E, faint knocking sounds could be heard, as if someone was trying to get out. I never returned to Nam Quang building after that case. But every time I pass through Sham Shui Po, I look up at the fourth floor of the building, wondering if the spirits confined within those walls are still waiting for a chance to escape. And sometimes, when I smell incense in the air, I still feel a slight ache forming behind my eyes, along with a thin trickle of nosebleed, a reminder of the dangers of confronting vengeful spirits trapped in the material world. Chapter 6. In the summer of 1994, Hong Kong was experiencing a record heat wave. Temperatures frequently exceeded 35°C, and the high humidity made the air seem suffocating. It was also during this time that one of the most terrifying cases I ever investigated occurred: the twin mirror case at the Shui Lian Hotel in Tsim Sha Tsui district. The Shui Lian Hotel was one of Hong Kong's most luxurious hotels at the time, with 25 floors and 300 premium rooms. Built in the 1970s, it was a symbol of opulence with magnificent interior designs by French and Italian designers. Problems began when a Japanese businessman, Mr. Takashi Yamamoto, reported to the hotel management that he had seen something unexplainable in the bathroom mirror of room B8. According to his account, when he entered the bathroom at 2:00 a.m. to take medicine, he looked into the mirror and saw himself standing behind him. Initially, hotel management dismissed it as Mr. Yamamoto seeing things due to fatigue or intoxication. But when the guest insisted on leaving the hotel immediately in the middle of the night, they began to worry. A week later, a female Hong Kong tourist, Lung Mei Lai, experienced a similar event in the same room. And the following week, an American couple reported not only seeing unusual reflections, but also hearing faint crying sounds emanating from behind the mirror. That's when Chief Inspector Lung called me. "A mirror case," he said over the phone. "Normally, I'd dismiss it as rumor, but this hotel has too many reports from reputable guests. Furthermore, I know the owner, Mr. Ku Tai-yung. He's not easily swayed by ghost stories." "So what do you want me to do?" I asked, already mentally preparing for a new case. "Book a room at that hotel, room B8. Stay one night and see if there's anything unusual." "Alone?" "No," Lung replied. "Dr. Yeep will accompany you. We need someone with solid scientific knowledge to analyze the situation." He paused slightly. "And bring an infrared camera." That evening, Dr. Yeep and I arrived at the Shui Lian Hotel, posing as a couple celebrating our anniversary. We specifically requested room B8, using the false pretense that we had stayed there on our wedding night. The hotel, unaware of our true purpose, arranged the room for us with a welcome fruit basket and a bottle of champagne. Quite impressive, Yeep remarked as we entered the luxurious room with a view of Victoria Harbor. If I didn't know about the ghost stories, I'd love to stay here. I smiled slightly. You can still enjoy the amenities, can't you? Where's the bathroom? The bathroom was a spacious area with a large bathtub, a separate shower, and a full-length mirror hanging on the wall opposite the sink. The mirror was framed in polished black oak with intricate carvings along the edges. This mirror looks normal, Yeep said, approaching to inspect it. There were no signs of unusual optical phenomena. I took a thermal camera and a magnetic field meter from my suitcase, standard tools for Unit S. Let's see if there are any anomalies in the physical structure. We checked the entire bathroom, focusing especially on the mirror. The magnetic field meter didn't detect anything unusual, but the thermal camera showed a strange cold spot in the center of the mirror, about 10 degrees colder than the rest. This isn't normal, Yeep remarked, her eyes glued to the camera screen. Mirrors usually reflect heat evenly. A cold spot like this suggests there might be a void behind the mirror or another object absorbing heat. We decided not to do anything further until late at night. According to previous reports, the phenomenon only occurred around 2:00 a.m. We had dinner at the hotel restaurant, then returned to our room and set up our surveillance equipment. 2 infrared cameras aimed at the mirror from different angles, a high-sensitivity audio recorder, and a continuous magnetic field meter. As the clock struck 1:30 a.m., we began to wake up and prepare. Yeep sat in front of her laptop, monitoring the devices, while I stood before the mirror. Feel anything? Yeep asked. A little cold, I replied, feeling the temperature in the bathroom seemingly drop, but it could just be the air conditioning. As the clock struck 1:55, Yeep suddenly exclaimed, "Magnetic field. It's fluctuating violently." I looked at the laptop screen and saw the magnetic field reading suddenly jump from a normal level of about 0.5 microteslas to nearly 10 microteslas, a huge increase. The mirror is also getting colder, Yeep said, pointing at the thermal camera. The entire mirror surface now showed dark blue, indicating extremely low temperatures. Exactly at 2:00 a.m., the entire bathroom plunged into darkness as the lights suddenly went out, even though the rest of the room remained lit. "What the hell?" I muttered, pulling out my flashlight. When I shined the flashlight on the mirror, my heart stopped. In the faint light, I could see my reflection. But there was another figure standing behind me, the figure of a woman in a long white dress with long black hair obscuring her face. I turned around sharply, but there was no one standing behind me. When I looked back at the mirror, the figure was still there, motionless. "Yeep," I called, my voice strained. "Do you see it?" Yeep, who had been looking at the laptop screen, looked up, her face pale. "Yes, I see someone." The figure in the mirror began to move. Though I stood still, it moved closer to my reflection and slowly raised its head. As the black hair slid aside, I saw a face, or rather, half a face. The other half was a mass of black clots and shredded flesh. "Take photos," I ordered, not daring to take my eyes off the mirror. Yeep quickly snapped a series of photos, the flash glaring, and each time, the figure in the mirror seemed to flinch. Suddenly, a faint whisper echoed from behind the mirror, a female voice speaking in Cantonese. "Help me, I'm still trapped." I tried to remain calm. "Who are you? Why are you trapped in the mirror?" The whispering voice replied, the sound seemingly coming from a distant space. "My name is Chan Won-yi. I died in this room in 1989. "How?" Yeep asked, her voice trembling but still professional. "How did you die?" "I committed suicide, but they didn't want to affect the hotel. They didn't call the police, they put a new mirror over the old one. I'm trapped between 2 worlds." Just then, the mirror began to vibrate, first gently, then more violently. A small crack appeared in the corner, and from it, a dark red liquid began to seep out. "Blood," Yeep whispered. "That's real blood." Without hesitation, I decided to break the mirror. I grabbed a chair from the bedroom and slammed it hard against the mirror. Instead of shattering as expected, the mirror only cracked into a complex web, and from those cracks, more blood began to flow. "We need to take the mirror down," I said. "See what's behind it." With Yeep's help, we pried the mirror from the wall. It was a difficult task, as the mirror was much heavier than expected. When we finally removed it, what we discovered astonished both of us. Behind the new mirror was an older, shattered mirror, and between the two mirrors was a layer of coagulated blood and strands of black hair that seemed to have been perfectly preserved in that confined space. "Oh my God," Yeep whispered. She was telling the truth, they covered it up. We immediately contacted Chief Inspector Leung, who arrived at the hotel with a full investigation team within an hour. Mr. Ku Tai-yung, the hotel owner, initially denied all accusations, but when confronted with the evidence, he confessed. In 1989, a young actress named Chan Won-yi committed suicide in room B8 after being betrayed by her boyfriend. Instead of reporting it to the police and facing a scandal that could ruin the hotel's reputation, Mr. Ku ordered management to conceal the incident. They installed a new mirror over the old one where Won-yi had committed suicide without properly disposing of her body. According to Master Wang, who later examined the scene, placing one mirror over another created a yin portal, a passage between the world of the living and the dead. Won-yi's spirit was trapped in that space, unable to move on or return. Mirrors are the boundary between worlds, Master Wang explained. In many cultures, mirrors are considered portals to the afterlife. When you place two mirrors facing each other, you create an infinite corridor. In this case, her spirit was trapped in that corridor. To free Won-yi's spirit, Master Wang performed a complex ritual, including cremating the strands of hair and blood found between the two mirrors, along with her personal belongings found in the hotel's storage. Mr. Ku Tai-yung was charged with concealing a crime and improper disposal of a body, but received only a suspended sentence due to insufficient clear evidence regarding Won-yi's death. After a long period, the Shui Lian Hotel permanently closed room B8, converting it into a storage room. But according to longtime employees, they sometimes still hear faint crying sounds emanating from that room at 2:00 a.m. And occasionally, in other mirrors in the hotel, guests still see the faint outline of a woman in a white dress standing behind them, with half her face covered in blood. After this horrifying case, I became extremely cautious with mirrors. I never looked into a mirror after midnight. And in my home in Hong Kong, I covered all mirrors every time I went to bed, a habit I still maintain to this day as I write these lines in my apartment in Taipei. Because, as Master Wang said, mirrors not only reflect the physical world, but can also reflect the other side. And sometimes, if you look at the right time, you might see what you shouldn't see. The faces of the deceased still looking at us from the other side. Chapter 7. After the horrifying case at the Shui Lian Hotel, I was granted 2 weeks' leave to recover my mental state. So was Yeep. She was so haunted by nightmares of the woman in the mirror that she had to seek help from a psychologist. When I returned to work in May 1993, I hoped to be assigned simpler cases, but Unit S was not a place to find peace. The next case I was assigned to investigate, at first glance, seemed less horrific, but in reality, it opened up another dark aspect of the spiritual world. The Old Street Theater in Wan Chai District was one of Hong Kong's oldest surviving theaters, built in the 1930s. The theater preserved traditional Chinese art, especially Peking opera performances. Every year, on the Feast of the Ancestors of Theater, on the 15th day of the 7th lunar month, Peking opera troupes held special ceremonies and performances to commemorate their predecessors. The incident began when 3 actors from the Tian Xiang Peking opera troupe suffered severe burns during a rehearsal. The strange thing was that, according to initial reports, they seemed to ignite from within, while their costumes were almost undamaged. Chief Inspector Leung called me to his office on a drizzly morning. "Inspector Tran," he said, "the fire department has ruled out electrical or chemical fires. They can't explain why only the people caught fire, while the surrounding objects, including their costumes, were almost intact." "Was there anything special about these 3 actors?" I asked. All 3 played the role of devils in the Judge's Lantern Opera performance. They were also the only ones performing on a special paper stage set up for the ancestors' feast. "A paper stage?" I frowned. "Yes, a small stage made entirely of paper, erected next to the main stage according to tradition. This is where performances for the spirits of the deceased are held. I went to the Old Street Theater that same day. The theater was deserted, with only a few staff members cleaning up and some actors rehearsing in another room. On the main stage, a smaller stage was placed in the right corner, an intricate structure made entirely of paper with elaborate cutout patterns and painted bright red. The person who met me was Mr. Ma Kin Man, the head of the Peking Opera Troupe, a man around 60 with sharp eyes and the majestic demeanor typical of seasoned Peking opera artists. "Inspector Tran," he greeted me in the deep, warm voice familiar to someone who had played high officials on stage. "I know you're here to investigate that accident." "That's right. Can you tell me in detail what happened?" Mr. Ma led me closer to the paper stage. From this distance, I could see the intricate details more clearly. Paper-cut dragons and phoenixes, tiny red silk ribbons hanging along the edges, and a small altar placed in front with incense, fruit, and a cup of tea. "This stage is specially erected for the ancestors' feast," Mr. Ma explained. "According to tradition, we perform a short play on it to commemorate deceased artists and invite them to enjoy the art they once loved in life." "And when did the accident happen?" "Last night, around 11 o'clock. We were rehearsing for the ceremony that will take place tomorrow. The three actors, Li Jialiang, Zhang Ming, and Liu Ziu Wen, were performing a scene from Judge's Lantern Opera, where three demon messengers bring the souls of the dead to meet the judge." "Was there anything unusual before they caught fire?" Mr. Ma hesitated for a moment, then quietly said, "Inspector, I'm not a superstitious man. I lived through the Cultural Revolution on the mainland, where we were forced to abandon all feudal superstitions. But," he paused, looking around to ensure no one was listening. "Just before the accident, I heard applause, not from the audience, which was completely empty, but seemingly coming from the air around us." I wrote down this information. "Anything else?" "The paper stage. It vibrated even though there was no wind, and the flames from the incense sticks on the altar suddenly burned unusually high, as if someone was blowing on them." I moved closer to inspect the paper stage. Strangely, although the three actors were severely burned, there were no signs of fire on this fragile paper structure. I took out a magnetic field meter and a heat detector. Standard tools of Unit S, the magnetic field meter detected nothing unusual, but the heat detector showed something strange. The entire paper stage had a significantly lower temperature than its surroundings, as if it were absorbing heat. "Mr. Ma, who made this paper stage?" I asked. "We hired a craftsman specializing in effigies from Sai Yingpun district. Mr. Liu, an old artisan who has been doing this for over 50 years. "What materials did he use?" "Traditional paper, glue, the usual things. I don't think there's anything special." "I need to talk to Mr. Liu, and I also want to see the costumes of the three injured actors." The costumes were stored in the props room, 3 black robes for the demon roles with characteristic demon masks. On closer inspection, I detected a strange odor emanating from the fabric, a fragrant smell of pine wood, but also a faint burnt smell, almost like burnt hair. "Who is in charge of costumes here?" I asked. "Ms. NG, the makeup and costume manager, but she's at the hospital with the 3 injured actors." I decided to visit Mr. Liu first. His workshop was located in a small alley in Sai Yingpun, an old neighborhood famous for its shops selling offerings and paper effigies. The workshop was small and damp, crammed with paper models of houses, cars, and other objects things Chinese people burned during ceremonies to send to the deceased. Mr. Liu was a thin old man with wrinkled but extraordinarily skillful hands. When I asked about the paper stage, he seemed hesitant. "It was a special order," he said, his old voice trembling. "Troop leader Ma asked for it to have more spirit than ordinary stages." "More spirit? What does that mean, sir?" I asked, feeling a chill run down my spine. Mr. Liu looked around, then lowered his voice. "In our trade, there's an ancient secret. For paper effigies to truly have spirit, you need a bit of connection to the other world." "What did you do with that stage?" "I mixed a little ash from a cremation with the paper pulp," he confessed. "It's an ancient way to ensure the spirits see the effigy when it's burned." My heart quickened. Whose ashes? I don't know the specific names. It was ash from a crematorium in Kowloon. A friend who works there would sometimes give me some when they had unclaimed ashes. But this stage wasn't designed to be burned, was it? It was used for real performances. Mr. Liu nodded, his face worried. That's the unusual thing. Effigies with human ashes should be burned to release the spirits. Otherwise, the spirits will be trapped in the object. With this information, I returned to the theater and asked to meet Ms. NG, the costume manager, who had returned from the hospital. She was a middle-aged woman with red eyes from crying. "Those 3 were my friends," she said, her voice trembling. "They suffered 70% body burns. The doctors say they might not make it." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, trying to keep my voice professional. "Can you tell me about the costumes they were wearing?" They were traditional demon robes, newly made for the ancestors' feast. Was there anything special about the fabric or the way they were sewn? Ms. NG shook her head. "No, they were sewn normally, however," she paused. "Anything unusual?" I noticed the costumes had a strange smell, like pine oil but stronger. I thought it might be due to exposure to incense smoke from the paper stage. I nodded. "Do you know who entered the costume room before the rehearsal?" Ms. NG thought for a moment. "Only the actors, me, and..." Mr. Liu stopped by. He said he wanted to see how his paper stage had been set up. The last piece of the puzzle fell into place. I contacted Master Wang, our spiritual expert, and asked him to come to the theater immediately. When he arrived, I presented all my findings. Master Wang examined the paper stage with a series of spiritual rituals, including burning special incense and sprinkling salt around it. Then he confirmed my suspicion. "This is a case of spirit-bound effigy symbiosis," he explained. "Ashes of the deceased mixed into an object create a vessel for the spirit. But since this stage wasn't designed to be burned, the spirits became trapped and restless." "But how does that explain the 3 actors getting burned?" I asked. "The costumes," Master Wang said. "I checked them. They were soaked in pine oil, a flammable substance used in traditional cremations. This wasn't ordinary pine oil, but oil extracted from spirit money burned at funerals, a very potent spiritual accelerant." So Mr. Liu soaked the costumes in pine oil. That's right. He probably wanted to create a special performance, one that both the living and the dead could enjoy. But he didn't understand that the spirits in the ashes wanted more. They wanted to perform one last time. "How?" I asked, though I had a feeling about the answer. "By possessing the bodies of the actors," Master Wang said, his voice deepening. "When the 3 actors stepped onto the paper stage, the spirits in the ashes tried to inhabit them. The reaction between the spiritual pine oil and the spirit's energy created the fire, not an ordinary fire, but ghost fire, a type of fire that burns from within. We performed a lengthy purification ritual, burning the paper stage in a special ceremony to release the trapped spirits. Mr. Liu was charged with causing grievous bodily harm by negligence, but was eventually released due to lack of scientific evidence that human ashes and pine oil could cause a fire. The 3 actors fortunately survived their severe burns, but they never performed Peking opera again. One of them, Li Jialiang, later became a Taoist priest, claiming that during the burning, he had a near-death experience and saw the afterlife. The Old Street Theater continued to hold its annual Ancestors' Feast, but they never used the paper stage again. Instead, they erected a simple altar with flowers and fruit, a safer way to honor the deceased artists. But according to longtime employees at the theater, on nights of traditional Peking opera performances, especially the Judge's Lantern Opera, they sometimes still hear applause from the empty seats, and occasionally, in the stage lights, they catch glimpses of faces watching the performance, faces that do not belong to any audience member in the theater. Chapter 8. By the summer of 1993, I had become the lead inspector of Unit S after Leung sustained minor injuries in a previous investigation. My report on the paper Peking opera stage case was highly praised by Chief Inspector Leung, and I was regularly entrusted with leading complex cases. The next case I want to recount is one of the most terrifying, not only for its supernatural nature, but also for the human brutality hidden beneath it. The Kowloon Temple slums, located in western Kowloon, was one of Hong Kong's poorest areas at the time. Hundreds of families lived crammed together in makeshift homes built from corrugated iron, wood, and any materials they could find. In the middle of the slums was a small temple dedicated to the Nine Dragons god, built in the 19th century and one of the few ancient structures remaining in the area. The case began when a series of strange attacks occurred. Residents of the slums were attacked by their own dogs. These were not ordinary minor bites. The victims were severely mauled, many dying on the spot. The strange thing was that all the attacking dogs were black dogs, a traditional black dog breed kept by locals for guarding. Chief Inspector Leung called me to his office on a cold morning. "Inspector Tran, this is the 5th case in a month. 5 victims, 5 black dogs, all living in the area around Kowloon Temple." "Is there any connection between the victims?" I asked. "Nothing obvious, but there's a strange thing. All the dogs were killed after attacking their owners, and during examination, a strange scent was detected emanating from their mouths." "What scent, Chief Inspector?" "Sandalwood, according to the forensic report, but not the usual kind used in religion. This is a more special kind, in Master Wang's field." "Exactly. He's waiting for you at the scene of the latest incident." The scene was a makeshift house in the slums near the ancient temple. The victim was Mr. Wang Wing Fat, a 60-year-old man who lived alone with his old black dog named Blackie. According to neighbors, Mr. Wang and Blackie had a very close relationship. The dog had been with him for over 10 years and had never shown aggression. When I arrived, Master Wang was already examining the dog's body. A large black dog with glossy black fur lay on a tarp about 2 meters from its owner's body. Both owner and dog were dead, but the scene was horrific. Mr. Wang had his throat and abdomen torn apart, while the dog had a large head wound, probably from being hit by police or neighbors to stop its attack. "Master Wang, what have you found?" I asked, trying to remain calm in front of the bloody scene. "A classic case of yin-qi transference," Master Wang said, his eyes still on the dog, "but on a much larger scale than I've ever seen." "What is yin-qi transference?" "An ancient ritual to redirect bad spiritual energy, or in this case, to control animals. Look." Master Wang pointed to the dog's mouth. "Open it wide so I can see inside." In the dog's throat was a small packet wrapped in dried lotus leaves, soaked in blood but still intact. Master Wang carefully removed it with silver chopsticks, a tool he always carried for spiritual rituals. "This is a beast control talisman," Master Wang explained, opening the packet. Inside was a reddish-brown mixture, emitting a pungent aroma sweet, but also somewhat metallic, like blood. "This is red sandalwood mixed with blood," Master Wang continued. "Not the dog's blood or its owner's, but the blood of the enemy, the person the controller wants the dog to attack." "How did they get this into the dog's mouth?" I asked, feeling nauseous. "Perhaps mixed it into food, or worse, forced the animal to swallow. When the sandalwood begins to digest in the stomach, the aroma will stimulate a primitive part of the animal's brain, making it recognize the mixed blood scent as that of an enemy." "But why did it attack its own owner?" Master Wang shook his head. "That's the strangest part. In theory, the dog should seek out someone whose blood scent matches the blood in the talisman. If it attacked its owner—" He paused, his expression becoming serious. "We need to test the blood of all the victims." Through further investigation, we discovered a common thread among all the victims. They were all members of a slum residents association who had opposed the relocation for a new real estate project. The victims had signed a petition to the authorities, protesting the demolition of the slums and the ancient temple. Master Wang and I decided to inspect the temple. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary, small, humble Taoist temple with a curved roof and weather-worn statues of deities. But as we entered, Master Wang immediately sensed something was wrong. "The incense on the altar," he said, pointing to the burning sticks, "that's not ordinary sandalwood. That's blood sandalwood, the kind used in beast control rituals." "Who lit these incense sticks?" "The temple keeper, I suppose." We found the temple keeper, a man around 50 named Mr. Chiu Ding, sweeping leaves in the back courtyard. When we approached, he appeared completely calm, as if he had anticipated our arrival. "Do you know about the dog attacks, Mr. Chiu?" I asked. "I've heard," he replied evenly. "It's regrettable." "You've been lighting a rather special kind of incense," Master Wang said, his eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Sandalwood is sandalwood," Mr. Chiu replied, shrugging. "I light whatever people bring to offer." "Who brought it?" "Many people, those who come to pray." We didn't get any more information from Mr. Chiu, but as we left the temple, Master Wang pulled me aside. "He's lying, and there's this." He pointed to a small inscription on a temple pillar. "This is the symbol of the Thai Fat Corporation, one of Hong Kong's largest construction contractors." Back at Unit S, we delved deeper into the Thai Fat Corporation and uncovered a link. They were the company that had acquired the slum land for development but were facing opposition from local residents. I called Dr. Yeep and asked her to perform a detailed autopsy on the victims, focusing especially on their blood composition. The results confirmed Master Wang's hypothesis. The blood of all victims contained a small amount of sandalwood. They had inadvertently inhaled smoke from the special incense sticks at the temple. "A type of marking," Master Wang explained as we discussed the findings. "The mastermind used sandalwood steeped in the blood of an enemy, in this case, the blood of those opposing the project, to mark them. When their pet dogs were fed a talisman containing the same type of blood, they would recognize that as the enemy and attack." "But how did they get the blood of all these people?" I asked. "They didn't need the specific blood of each person. They just needed the blood of one person from the opposing group. That blood was used to create a hostile scent in the sandalwood. When the others came to the temple and inhaled the incense smoke, they would also carry that scent." We devised a plan to catch the mastermind. With the help of local police, we set up a 24-hour surveillance operation around the temple. 3 days later, we caught a man changing the special incense sticks early in the morning. He was Li Daihu, a high-ranking member of the Thai Fat Corporation. When arrested, he confessed to hiring a sorcerer from rural Guangdong to perform the yin qi transference, ritual to eliminate project opponents without leaving a trace. "They were just mad dogs," he rationalized. "No one could prove otherwise." But his confession, along with the scientific evidence of sandalwood in the victim's blood and the talismans in the dogs' stomachs, was enough to convict him of murder. Master Wang performed a purification ritual for the entire area, especially the temple and the remaining houses with black dogs. He also advised residents to give their dogs a special type of water to neutralize the effects of the sandalwood if they had inadvertently ingested it. The Kowloon temple slums were eventually demolished for the new project. But after this case, the Thai Fat Corporation was forced to agree to better compensation terms for the residents and to preserve the ancient temple. However, no one wanted to worship at that temple anymore. The temple still stands as a grim reminder of what happened, and everyone avoids it when night falls. The black dogs, once symbols of protection in Chinese culture, for a long time afterward became objects of fear in the area. Many people chose to adopt other breeds or stopped owning dogs altogether. For me, this case was a reminder that sometimes true horror doesn't come from the other side, but from human greed and cruelty, willing to use any means, even dark ancient rituals, to achieve their goals. And ever since this case, I began to look at black dogs on the street with a slight sense of unease, wondering if they were looking at me or seeing something I couldn't. Chapter 9. One of Hong Kong's characteristics is how the old and new intertwine. Modern skyscrapers stand alongside ancient temples, and bustling streets with dazzling neon lights can lead to hidden corners where time seems to stand still. Koshing Street is a prime example, a historic street nestled on a hillside in the central and western district, where old colonial buildings intersperse with modern structures. In October 1993, as autumn began to bring the first cold winds from the north, a series of reports about supernatural phenomena at Koshing Street Mental Hospital reached Unit S. The hospital had been abandoned for nearly 10 years, but nearby residents consistently reported laughter and screams emanating from the building at midnight, especially on full moon nights. Initially, regular police assumed it was just mischievous children or homeless people seeking shelter. But after 2 patrol officers went missing for 4 to 8 hours and were then found in a state of panic in room 9 of the hospital, Chief Inspector Leung decided to assign this to Unit S. Those 2 officers are currently in the hospital, Leung told me as he handed over the case file. They don't remember anything about the 4 to 8 hours they were missing, but both are haunted by the same hallucination. They believe they are surrounded by thousands of rats. Were any rats found in the hospital? I asked. A few, but not enough to cause such a terrifying reaction. However, there's another strange thing. Both officers had small wounds on their bodies, resembling rodent bites, arranged in a specific pattern. Leung showed me photos of the officers' arms and necks. The wounds formed a strange pattern, almost like an inverted Bagua diagram. Master Wang says this is a type of spiritual seal, a spiritual imprint used to control the mind. He'll meet you at the scene. I arrived at Kaohsiung Street Mental Hospital late in the afternoon, as the last rays of daylight slowly gave way to darkness. The old 4-story colonial building, with its white facade, had been weathered by time to a damp, grayish blue. Tall arched windows were boarded up with wooden planks, and the rusted iron gate was secured with multiple layers of chains and padlocks. Master Wang was waiting outside with a group of local police and Dr. Yip, who had brought a magnetic field meter and other scientific tools. This building has a strange history, Master Wang said as we stood before the gate. Built in 1925 during British colonial rule, it was initially an ordinary hospital. But during World War II, the Japanese military used it as a torture site for prisoners. After the war, it was converted into a mental hospital, operating until 1985. Why was it closed? I asked. Officially, due to budget cuts, Yip interjected. But there were rumors of unconventional treatment methods and an unusually high mortality rate. As we broke the lock and entered, I immediately sensed a heavy atmosphere. The air was cold and damp, carrying a musty smell and another odor, almost like ozone after a thunderstorm. The magnetic field is very strong here, Yip remarked, looking at her meter, 3 times the normal level. We walked through the lobby with its checkerboard black and white tiled floor, now cracked and covered in dust. The white walls were stained with watermarks, and here and there, modern graffiti intermingled with faded Chinese or English script, perhaps from former patients. Room 9 is on the 2nd floor, Master Wang said, but first, we should check the electrical system. According to reports, the lights occasionally still come on even though the building has been without power for a long time. We made our way down to the basement, where the generators and main electrical system were located. As I opened the door to the electrical room, Yip gasped. Her magnetic field meter suddenly jumped to an extremely high level. "What is that?" she whispered. Before us, the old electrical panel system had been transformed into something entirely different. Complex wires intricately intertwined, curving and angling precisely to form a giant pattern on the wall. "Bagua," Master Wang murmured. "Someone has turned the entire electrical system into a giant Bagua diagram, and hanging from the carefully tied wires are dozens of dried rat carcasses. Some have turned to bone, others still have skin and fur clinging to them. All are arranged along the lines of the Bagua. This is an ancient form of forbidden magic," Master Wang explained, his voice trembling. "A method to trap souls and spiritual energy. Rats, especially white rats, were once used in psychological experiments here. They were believed to be good vessels for pathological spirits." "So this is a way to confine the spirits of patients?" I asked. Master Wang shook his head. "Not just spirits. This is a way to trap the mental illnesses themselves, their psychological disorders. This Bagua was designed as a kind of spiritual prison, but now it's failing." "The system is decaying," Yip said, pointing to broken wires and fallen rat carcasses. "Precisely," Master Wang nodded. "When the hospital closed, no one maintained this prison anymore, and now what was confined is escaping." We continued to the 2nd floor to find room 9, where the 2 police officers had been found. The hallway was dark, with 2 rows of rooms facing each other. Most of the doors had rotted or fallen off their hinges. The air here was even heavier, and I felt an invisible pressure weighing on my shoulders. Room 9 was at the end of the hallway. Unlike the other rooms, its door was still intact and closed. A strange symbol was carved on the door, a rhombus with many complex lines inside. "This is a spiritual restraint seal," Master Wang explained. "A type of spiritual lock. This room was likely used to confine the most dangerous patients." As we prepared to open the door, Yeep suddenly raised her hand to stop us. The magnetic field, it's fluctuating violently. Just then, a laugh echoed from behind the door. Not the laugh of one person, but of many intertwined, forming a piercing sound that was both sorrowful and insane. Master Wang and I exchanged glances, then simultaneously pushed open the door to room 9. The room was empty, with only a rusted iron bed and a small window blocked by iron bars. There were no signs of anyone, but as we stepped inside, the laughter seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Yeep scanned the room with her magnetic field meter and discovered something astonishing. "This wall," she said, tapping her foot gently. "It's vibrating at an audio frequency, as if it's playing back sounds." Master Wang approached the wall, pressed his ear against it, and listened. Not just an audio frequency, this is psychic echo, a form of spiritual energy stored in matter. This wall has absorbed all the cries, laughter, and pain of the patients who were once here, and now it's playing them back. "So, when the locking system in the basement broke, these echoes were released," I said, feeling a chill run down my spine. "They found their way to room 9, the room with the strongest connection to the other side." As we examined it more closely, Yeep discovered that the wall of room 9 was built with a special type of mortar containing a large amount of iron and other magnetic minerals. This transformed the entire room into a kind of giant magnetic tape, capable of recording and playing back energy fluctuations. "But why did the two police officers have hallucinations about rats?" I asked. Master Wang pointed to the ceiling, where a faint pattern emerged under our flashlight. A pattern identical to the bagua in the basement. "This is a closed system," he explained. "The mental illnesses were confined within the electrical system in the basement, but they needed a place to regenerate, a space to recreate themselves. That was this room. When the wires rotted and the rat carcasses fell, the mental illnesses were released and found their way here. And the two officers inadvertently walked into the middle of that process." "Exactly," Yeep said. "They absorbed a part of the mental illness. In this case, probably a type of delusion related to rats, a common fear in old mental hospitals." We decided that the best way to address the problem was to completely dismantle the bagua pattern in the basement and seal room 9 with spiritual measures. Master Wang performed a complex ritual, using holy salt, special incense, and Taoist talismans to erase the psychic echoes from the wall and release the trapped spirits. Afterward, we recommended to the authorities that the building be completely demolished, a recommendation that was finally accepted 2 years later when a new development project was approved for the area. But until the day the building was torn down, local residents still reported that on rainy nights, especially during thunderstorms, they could still hear laughter and whispers emanating from the abandoned building. And occasionally, through the dark windows of the second floor, one could catch glimpses of faces pressed against the glass, with empty eyes and distorted smiles, as if they were still seeking an escape from their spiritual prison. Chapter 10. By early 1994, Hong Kong was experiencing a wave of new underground culture. Underground bars, nightclubs, and secret parties flourished in old industrial buildings and abandoned spaces. This was a period when Hong Kong's youth sought bolder, new experiences, perhaps a psychological reaction to the uncertainty about the future as the handover date approached. I vividly remember the incident that occurred on a cold January night. Chief Inspector Loong called me around 4:00 a.m. His voice was urgent and strained. "Tran, get to Lan Kwai Fong immediately. Number 28 Black Bean Street, 5th floor, there's a massacre." Lan Kwai Fong was an old red light district in Hong Kong, but in recent years, many old buildings had been converted into art studios, design workshops, and underground bars. When I arrived, the streets were swarming with police cars and ambulances, blue and red flashing lights reflecting off the old brick walls. I met Leung in the building lobby, where police officers were standing guard. "This is the worst I've ever seen," he said, his face pale despite being a seasoned officer. "And I'm not sure if this is an X case or not, but something isn't right." We went up to the 5th floor in an old, creaky elevator. The hallway was dark, lit only by flickering fluorescent lights that cast eerie shadows on the walls. The air was thick with the smell of dampness and a distinctive metallic scentha smell of blood. The entrance to the club, simply called Primate, according to the red neon sign, had been forced open. Inside, the scene was one of unimaginable chaos. The space, about 200 square meters, was designed as a nightclub with a dance floor, a bar, and a DJ area. But now, everything was covered in blood. Large puddles of blood on the floor, blood splattered on the walls, and what appeared to be torn body parts strewn everywhere. "How many people?" I asked, trying to remain calm. "We're not sure," Leung replied. "At least 15 bodies, but it's hard to determine exactly due to their condition." Dr. Yeep was already at the scene, dressed in full protective gear, examining the body parts. She looked up when she saw us and gestured for us to come closer. "This is not an ordinary murder," she said, her voice serious. "The victims were not just killed, they were torn apart. And based on the wounds, I can say they were attacked with teeth and fingernails, not knives or weapons." "An animal?" I asked. "Not exactly. The bite marks are clearly human, but the biting force is much stronger than a normal human jaw is capable of." As we ventured deeper into the club, I noticed a strange detail. The entire floor was covered in fur-not human hair, but a type of short, coarse, dark animal fur, almost like monkey fur. "What is this?" I asked, bending down to pick some up. "Fake fur," a nearby police officer replied. "We found dozens of monkey masks scattered everywhere. It looks like this was a monkey-themed party or something similar." As I looked closer, I did indeed see fragments of masks. Intricate rubber masks in the shape of monkey heads. Some were still intact, most were torn to shreds. I went to the bar, which seemed the least damaged. On the counter were a series of small glass bottles containing a dark red liquid, simply labeled monkey blood. "Have these bottles been analyzed?" I asked Yeep. "Yes, a preliminary analysis. Not ordinary drugs. We're waiting for detailed results from the lab, but there's one thing I can tell you immediately. It's not monkey blood. It's human blood mixed with some kind of serum." My heart pounded faster. "What serum?" "We're not sure, but it contains traces of the rabies virus." In the farthest corner of the club, near the DJ area, we found 2 bodies more intact than the others, one male and one female. Both were dressed in glossy black clothes in a Gothic style. The man clutched an empty syringe, and the woman held a box labeled MASKS. "I think we found the organizers," Leung said, pointing at them, "but that doesn't explain what happened here." A police officer approached us, carrying a small video camera. "Inspector, we found this mounted on the wall near the entrance. It was still recording." We watched the footage right there at the scene on the small screen of the camcorder. What we saw made even Leung hold his breath. The footage began with a bustling bar full of young people dancing. Everyone wore monkey masks. The rubber masks covered their entire heads, so intricate they were almost realistic. The DJ was playing heavy bass music, and the crowd was completely ecstatic. Around 3:00 a.m., according to the video's timestamp, the DJ announced that Monkey Blood Hour had arrived. Guards began distributing the small red liquid bottles to the cheering crowd. Everyone simultaneously raised their bottles, partially removed their masks, and drank deeply. For the first few minutes, nothing happened. Then, a young girl began to convulse. She fell to the floor, writhing, her limbs flailing. Others laughed loudly, thinking it was part of a performance. But then she sprang up with extraordinary agility and leaped onto the back of a nearby young man, tearing at his neck. That was the beginning of the chaos. One by one, attendees began to exhibit similar symptoms: convulsions followed by extreme aggression. They started attacking each other, not just with fists but with teeth and fingernails, tearing at clothes and flesh with incredible strength. The DJ and organizers initially seemed amused, as if this were part of the plan. But as the violence rapidly escalated, their faces turned from satisfied to horrified. They tried to flee, but the crowd was completely out of control. The video ended with the DJ and a woman, presumably the two we found, running towards the camera, blood splattering all over the lens as they were dragged back into the crowd. "Oh my God," Leung whispered. "They turned the attendees into wild beasts." "Not just wild beasts," Yeep said, her voice trembling. "Based on how they moved and attacked, I'd say they activated the ape part of the human brain, the primitive, instinctive, uncontrolled part." "The ape part?" I asked. "Humans and primates share most of their DNA," Yeep explained. "Some theories suggest that under extreme stress or certain stimulants, humans can revert to the primal instincts of their primate ancestors, and this monkey blood activated that. Perhaps the serum, infected with the rabies virus, stimulated the amygdala and other brain regions associated with aggression. Combined with psychological suggestion from the monkey masks and the music, it created a perfect storm." As we continued our investigation, we learned that Primate was a new underground club that had only been operating for 2 months. It was run by a group calling themselves New Humanity, a small cult that believed humans needed to return to their primate origins to free themselves from societal inhibitions. The club's real owner was Lam Jiahu, a young millionaire with eccentric interests in biology and psychology. He had recruited a group of scientists expelled from mainstream research institutions to develop monkey blood, a serum supposedly capable of activating primal freedom in humans. That evening was apparently the first time they tested the strongest version of this serum on a large group, with results far exceeding their worst predictions. A total of 23 people died in the incident, including Lam and his entire research team. 3 people survived in critical condition, and when they awoke, they remembered nothing of what had happened, only nightmares of being trapped inside the mind of an uncontrollable wild animal. The remaining, monkey blood, samples were sent to a high-level biosafety laboratory for study and destruction. The serum was found to contain a variant of the rabies virus combined with hallucinogenic psychoactive substances and a type of brain protein formulated from monkey brains. This case did not have obvious supernatural elements like other Unit S cases, but it still left me with a deep sense of fear. Because that night, I saw something more terrifying than ghosts. I saw the beast hidden deep within each of us, just waiting for an opportunity to break free. Building 28 Blackbean Street was eventually demolished by order of the authorities, citing official reasons of safety violations. But sometimes, people passing by the area at night still report hearing deep, muffled bass music and strange laughter emanating from a building that no longer exists. And occasionally, in the dark corners of Lan Kwai Fong, one still catches glimpses of figures with strange gaits, almost ape-like, with eyes reflecting the streetlights like wild animals. Chapter 11. In the spring of 1994, Hong Kong was beginning to feel the gradual changes as the handover to China approached. With just over 3 years left, an atmosphere of anxiety and uncertainty began to permeate the city, leading many to seek traditional spiritual methods for certainty and protection for the future. It was in this context that the Chusa Alley case unfolded, a case that still haunts me to this day due to its combination of human despair and ancient dark rituals. Chusa Alley was a small alley located deep within the Tai Hang district, an old neighborhood in western Hong Kong known for its traditional Chinese medicine shops, feng shui items, and charms. The alley was named after the bright red mineral cinnabar, Chusa, an important component in traditional medicine and spiritual rituals. The case began when a medical student reported the disappearance of his girlfriend, Liu Jiawei, a 20-year-old girl in her second year at the University of Hong Kong. She was last seen entering Chusa Alley after confiding in friends that she had an unwanted pregnancy and was seeking a solution. When ordinary police found no clues after a week of investigation, and when it was discovered that Liu Jiawei was not the only missing person case linked to Chusa Alley, the case was transferred to Unit S. Chief Inspector Leung called me to his office on a drizzly October afternoon. "Tran, we have a serious problem. In the past 6 months, 6 young women have disappeared after being seen entering Chusa Alley. All of them have one thing in common: they were all pregnant with unwanted pregnancies. "Does anyone live in that alley?" I asked. "Only one shop, the Chusa Longevity Shop, a store selling traditional Chinese medicine and spiritual items, run by an elderly woman named Mok Lin Fa. Police have questioned her multiple times but found nothing suspicious." "What did she say?" "She claimed that the girls came to her shop to buy purification tea, a type of herbal tea supposedly capable of ending pregnancy. She said she sold them the tea and they left, nothing else, but they never returned home." "Exactly, and there are no security cameras in that area. Chusa Alley is one of the rare places in modern Hong Kong without electronic eyes." Dr. Yeep and I went to Chusa Alley that afternoon. The alley was so narrow that only two people could walk side by side, with old, moss-covered brick walls on either side. Sunlight barely reached the bottom of the alley, creating a gloomy, damp atmosphere even in the middle of the day. The Chusa Longevity Shop was at the end of the alley, a small shop with old wooden windows and a faded red painted sign. Inside, the smell of herbs, incense, and another scent, a sweet, slightly metallic smell, almost like blood, filled the space. Mok Lin Fa was a woman around 70 with neatly tied white hair and unusually sharp eyes. She wore a black kippao, her hands withered like tree branches, holding a long pipe, smoke curling around her like ghostly fingers. "More police," she said as we entered, her voice raspy but showing no signs of worry. "How many of you have there been?" 10, 20. "Madam Mok," I introduced myself in Yeep. "We're from a special unit. We want to ask you about the missing girls." "I've already told your colleagues. They came to buy tea and left. I know nothing about their disappearances." Yeep looked around the shop, noting the shelves full of glass jars containing herbs, dried insects, and colorful powders. A separate shelf was filled with jars of cinnabar, a bright red powder derived from mercury minerals. "You sell a lot of cinnabar," Yeep remarked. "It's the name of the shop," Mok Lin Fa replied, shrugging. "Cinnabar is a precious material in traditional medicine, although many modern people consider it toxic due to its mercury content." "And does your purification tea contain cinnabar?" I asked. She gave a slight laugh. "Of course not. It's just a common herbal mixture, a chiranthus, dong quai, safflower, nothing illegal or dangerous." As we continued to question her, Mok Lin Fa maintained her story. There was no clear evidence against her, and the shop, though odd, still looked like an ordinary traditional medicine shop. But as we prepared to leave, I noticed something that made me stop. On the floor near the counter was a small, bright red stain. When I looked closer, I saw it wasn't cinnabar or paint. It was blood. Fresh blood. "Are you injured, Madam Mok?" I asked, pointing to the blood stain. She looked down, and I could see a flicker of confusion in her eyes. "Oh, that. I cut my hand while preparing some herbs this morning. Nothing to worry about." As we left the shop, Yeep whispered to me, "That wasn't fake blood. It was young and fresh blood. And there's this." She pointed to her shoes, where a little red powder clung. "The floor is covered with a thin layer of cinnabar. Why would someone selling cinnabar waste it on the floor?" We decided to report our suspicions to Chief Inspector Leung and request a search warrant. While waiting, we learned more about Mok Lin Fa. It turned out she was not a native Hong Kong resident, but came from a rural area in Guangdong known for its ancient spiritual practices. The Chusa Longevity Shop had only been open for 2 years, but had quickly gained notoriety among young women struggling with unwanted pregnancies. Master Wang, our spiritual expert, also researched cinnabar and its spiritual significance. He explained that in some ancient Taoist rituals, cinnabar was believed to have the ability to separate the soul, detaching it from the physical body. "There's an ancient ritual called the ghost fetus transference ritual," Master Wang explained. "In the past, when a woman wanted to end a pregnancy but feared karmic retribution, they would sometimes perform this ritual. It involved using cinnabar and charms to transfer the fetus into another vessel, usually a doll or a small statue. In theory, this allowed the woman to end the pregnancy without incurring bad karma, as the fetus's soul still lived in the vessel." "But that's just superstition, right?" Yeep asked, though after all we had seen, she was less skeptical of spiritual matters in most cases. "Yes, but there are darker versions of this ritual. involving the use of human blood and bagua coins to create a stronger link. In these versions, the fetus is not just transferred but also trapped, imprisoned in the vessel as a form of spiritual slavery. With a search warrant in hand, we returned to the Chusa longevity shop late at night. Moklin Fa was not there, which was strange because, according to neighbors, she lived behind the shop and rarely left. We began a thorough search. The small shop had only 2 main rooms, the front display area and a back room that seemed to be where Moklin Fa lived and prepared her herbal concoctions. Nothing particularly suspicious until Yeep noticed something strange about the floor. "This wooden floor," she said, tapping her foot gently. "It's hollow underneath, and look," she pointed to small scratches on the floor. "Someone regularly moves something heavy across here." We moved a heavy medicine cabinet, discovering a small trapdoor hidden under the rug. When we opened it, a terrible smell wafted up, the stench of decay mixed with the sweet odor of cinnabar and incense smoke. A wooden staircase led down to a small basement where we discovered a shocking sight. 6 large ceramic jars were arranged in a circle, each marked with a different symbol. In the center of the circle was a small altar with a wooden goddess statue I didn't recognize. With gloves and masks on, we opened the first jar. Inside was a dark red liquid mass, a mixture of cinnabar and some kind of preservative. And within that liquid mass was a human fetus, perhaps about 3 to 4 months old, perfectly preserved. Around the fetus was a string of ancient bagua coins, each engraved with strange symbols. The other 5 jars were similar, each containing a fetus at different stages of development. All were preserved in the same type of cinnabar solution and surrounded by bagua coins. "This is a form of fetus spirit jar," Master Wang whispered when he was called to the scene. "An extremely dark ritual involving the preservation of fetuses for black magic purposes. Cinnabar not only preserves the physical body, but also binds the soul, preventing it from reincarnating." "But why?" I asked, still shocked by what I was seeing. "Energy," Master Wang explained. "In some ancient spiritual systems, the souls of fetuses are considered particularly powerful and pure. By harvesting and imprisoning these souls, a sorcerer can accumulate power for other rituals. And with the bagua coins, they can draw upon this energy when needed." We sealed off the area and began a manhunt for Moklin Fa. She was found 2 days later trying to board a ferry to the mainland. When arrested, she showed no remorse or denial. Instead, she uttered a strange sentence. "You don't understand, those unborn children were the last offerings. He has returned, and he is hungry." She never clarified who he was, and psychiatrists concluded she suffered from delusions. Moklin Fa was sentenced to life imprisonment for 6 counts of murder, although the details of the case, especially the part related to the spiritual ritual, were never widely publicized. The fetuses were cremated according to appropriate religious rituals, with the attendance of spiritual experts from various traditions to ensure their souls were released. Master Wang performed a comprehensive purification ritual at Chusa Alley, and he advised the authorities to seal off the alley. But whether the alley was sealed or not, people living nearby still reported that on new moon nights, they could still hear the cries of infants echoing from what was once the Chusa longevity shop. And occasionally, at dawn, a thin red mist could be seen rising from the basement of the closed shop, as if the cinnabar was still evaporating, carrying with it souls not yet fully released. Chapter 12. Hong Kong is known for its modern and efficient drainage system, a significant achievement for a city that frequently faces tropical downpours and typhoons. A vast underground sewer system runs beneath the city, a complex network of concrete and metal tunnels that most residents never see but rely on daily. In the summer of 1994, as tropical rains frequently drenched the city, a series of unusual deaths occurred within Hong Kong's drainage system. 3 maintenance workers died within a month. All died of asphyxiation, though there were no clear signs of toxic gas or high water levels. Initially, the Drainage Services Department believed it could be due to undetected toxic gas accumulation or inadequate breathing apparatus. But when the 4th victim, an experienced supervising engineer fully equipped with safety gear, also died with the same pattern, the case was transferred to Unit S. Chief Inspector Leung called me into his office on a damp February morning, light rain continually pattering on the window. Inspector Tran, I just received the forensic reports on the sewer victims, he said, handing me a thick file. There's something wrong about these deaths. I scanned the report, noting the anomalies. All died of asphyxiation, but with no signs of water in the lungs or toxic gas in the blood, and all had bruising on their ankles. Precisely, Leung nodded, as if someone or something had dragged them down. 4 victims, all found in different locations, but within the same sewer system. The system that runs along Hale Street. Hale Street? I frowned. Isn't that the area where we investigated the female ghost case at the pier last year? That's right, Leung sighed. The old Hale Pier, where dozens drowned in a shipwreck in the 1960s. The sewer drains right next to that area. The coincidence was too obvious to ignore. I asked Master Wang to join me on this investigation, and we arranged a search of the sewer system for the following day. The Drainage Services Department provided us with a guide, Mr. Lam Jia Hung, a middle-aged man who had worked in the sewer system for over 20 years. He led us to an entrance near Hale Street, a large manhole cover in a small street about 500 meters from the harbor. The 4 victims were found in 4 different locations, Mr. Lam explained as we prepared to descend. But all were in the same main sewer line running parallel to the coast and draining into Hale Bay. What's the current water level? I asked, checking my safety gear. Low, only about 30 centimeters. We're in the dry season, and there hasn't been heavy rain recently. That's the strange thing about these deaths. The water level was too low to cause drowning. We donned our gas masks, put on helmets with headlamps, and began to climb down the long iron ladder leading into the damp darkness. The smell of mold and faint sewage attacked our senses even through the masks, and the gurgling sound of water echoed in the narrow space. Once we reached the bottom, we stood in a concrete pipe-shaped sewer tunnel about 2 meters wide, with a slow-moving stream of dark water in the middle. Our headlamps illuminated the damp walls, covered in moss and mold. The first victim's location is about 200 meters that way, Mr. Lam said, pointing north. We'll check all 4 locations in chronological order of deaths. As we walked along the sewer, I noticed something strange about the water. It had an unnatural reflection, almost like a mirror, though the surface was quite murky. Master Wang also noticed this and stopped to examine it. High mercury content, he murmured after using a simple test strip. Not enough to cause immediate poisoning, but enough to create this reflective effect. Where did the mercury come from? I asked. Mr. Lam shrugged. Perhaps from industrial activity. Many old factories in this area discharged all sorts of chemicals before environmental regulations were tightened. We continued to move and eventually reached the first location, marked by a red painted circle on the wall. There was nothing special about this space, just a section of the sewer like any other. He was found here, Mr. Lam said, pointing to a spot about 2 meters from the water's surface. Mr. Chan Wing Kwang, 45, a sewer maintenance worker with 15 years of experience. He was checking a small leak on the wall when his colleagues heard a scream. When they arrived, he was face down in the water, dead. Did his colleagues see anything? Master Wang asked. No, but they said that just before hearing the scream, they felt a sudden drop in temperature, so cold that their breath froze in the air. I took out an infrared camera and began to scan the area. There was nothing unusual about the temperature at the moment, but when I pointed the camera at the water, I noticed a strange cold spot moving just beneath the surface, as if a colder current was swirling within the main flow. Master Wang, look, I called, pointing to the camera screen. He approached and observed the movement of the cold spot. Interesting, it moves against the water flow. We continued to the remaining 3 locations. Each was similar, with no clear signs of the cause of death, only stories from witnesses about sudden screams and temperature drops. At each location, I discovered the same cold spot moving in the water. At the last location, where the supervising engineer was found just a week prior, Master Wang decided to perform an experiment. He took a small packet of white powder from his bag and sprinkled it onto the water. Holy salt, he explained. If there's something in the water that doesn't belong to this world, it will react. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then suddenly, the water began to boil at the point of contact, not boiling from heat, but as if something underneath was thrashing in agony. Our headlamps began to flicker, and a sudden cold swept through the sewer, so intense that my teeth began to chatter. "We should leave here now," Master Wang said, his voice urgent. "Right now." But as we turned to leave, I felt something grab my ankle, a cold, wet hand. I looked down and saw a pale arm reaching out from the water, just up to my ankle, gripping my leg tightly. "Master Wang?" I shouted, trying to pull my leg free. He turned immediately, saw the situation, and threw another handful of salt into the water. The arm vanished with a horrifying hiss, but the water began to rise unnaturally, not from the normal flow, but as if being pushed up from below. "Run," Master Wang ordered, pulling me and Mr. Lamb towards the exit. As we ran, I risked a look over my shoulder and saw an unbelievable sight. From the water, now knee-high, faces were slowly emerging. Faces of men, women, and children, all pale with hollow black eyes, long black hair floating on the surface like snakes. They reached out towards us, their mouths wide in silent screams. We ran at full speed, the water rising behind us, almost touching our backs as we finally reached the iron ladder. We climbed as fast as we could, the water pursuing us until we were near the manhole opening, then abruptly receded, as if pulled back by an invisible force. Safe on solid ground, all three of us sat, gasping for breath, water dripping from our soaked clothes. Mr. Lamb looked utterly shocked, his face as white as paper. "What the hell was that?" he whispered. "Vengeful spirits," Master Wang replied, trying to regain his composure. "The souls of the drowned. Water is their medium, where they exist between the living and dead worlds." "From the shipwreck?" I asked. "Possibly, but I think it's more than that. Hale Pier has a long history of drownings. The shipwreck in the 1960s, a ferry capsizing in the 1950s. And according to historical records, it was once a site for executing criminals by drowning during early colonial times. But why are they attacking now? This sewer system has been here for decades." Master Wang thought for a moment. "Mercury. I think that's the catalyst. In many cultures, mercury is considered a spiritual conductor, a substance that can enhance the connection between worlds. The high concentration of mercury in the sewer water has created a kind of water mirror, a reflective surface where spirits can see the world of the living, and when they see humans entering their domain. They drag them down," I finished his sentence. "But how do we stop this? We can't shut down the entire sewer system, can we?" "No, but we can perform a liberation ritual," Master Wang said. "In folklore, there's a way to release spirits bound to water. We must bury their hair and fingernails at the mouth of the sea, where fresh water meets salt water. This symbolizes the transition from one world to another." "But how do we get their hair and fingernails?" Mr. Lamb asked, still bewildered. "We don't need all of them. According to the principle of pars pro toto, a part represents the whole. We only need some, and fortunately," Master Wang looked at me, "we have some samples." I looked down at my wrist, where long black hairs still clung from the ghostly hand that had grabbed me. With Dr. Yeep's help, we collected samples from the 4 deceased victims' hair and fingernails still in the morgue. Combined with the hairs clinging to me, we had enough to perform the ritual. At sunset that day, at the point where the sewer drained into Hale Bay, Master Wang performed an ancient ritual. He dug a small hole precisely where fresh water met salt water, placed the hair and fingernails in a small red cloth bag, and buried it with incense, wine, and prayers. As the ritual concluded, a strange phenomenon occurred. From the mouth of the sewer, a stream of water suddenly gushed out powerfully, even though there was no rain. The water was inky black, but as it flowed into the sea, it gradually became clear. And for a brief moment, in the twilight, I could see dozens of faces in the water, no longer pale and terrifying, but peaceful and almost grateful as they were finally released into the vast ocean. Since then, no further deaths have occurred in the sewer system along Hale Street. The Drainage Services Department undertook a major project to remove mercury from wastewater, officially citing environmental concerns. Maintenance workers were equipped with additional safety gear, including temperature detectors to spot sudden changes. But even today, workers in the sewer system still recount strange moments. When they feel as if someone is watching from beneath the murky water, or when they faintly hear whispers accompanying the sound of flowing water. And many still follow an unofficial custom. Before descending into the sewer, they drop a handful of salt into the water and whisper a brief prayer for permission to whatever or whoever might be listening from the darkness below. Chapter 13. Every year, the 15th day of the 7th lunar month, also known as the Zhongyuan Festival or Ulambana Festival, is, according to Chinese folk belief, the day when the gates of hell open and the souls of the dead are allowed to return to the living world for a short time. This is a time when families burn paper offerings, light incense, and make sacrifices to commemorate their ancestors. Paper items from hell money, clothes, to houses and cars, even iPads and smartphones are burned to be sent to the deceased. The Ghost Festival of 1994 brought one of the most bizarre cases I ever investigated. It all began when police received dozens of calls reporting a strange phenomenon in the Sai Kung district, an old neighborhood specializing in ceremonial offerings and paper effigies. Residents reported that at midnight, they saw dozens of paper dolls automatically lining up along the main street, then mysteriously disappearing. Chief Inspector Loong called me early the next morning. "Tran, have you heard about the incident in Sai Kung?" "Yes, sir. The morning papers reported it, but I thought it was just kids playing pranks or maybe some kind of street performance." "I thought so too, until I saw the photos residents took. And there's this. Throughout last night, 5 people suffered severe burns while walking through that area. They described being attacked by burning paper fragments falling from the sky." Dr. Yeep and I arrived in Sai Kung in the afternoon. The neighborhood was bustling with preparations for the Ghost Festival. Shops displayed all kinds of paper offerings, from hell money to intricate paper models of houses, cars, even iPads and smartphones. The air was thick with the scent of incense and new paper. We met Sergeant Wang, who had taken the initial reports. He led us to a street corner where many witnesses had seen the procession of paper dolls. "They stood in a line from this corner all the way to the end of the street," Wang explained, pointing along the road. "About 50 dolls, according to witness descriptions. All were the same size, about 30 cm tall, dressed in traditional red garments, looking like child dolls made of paper." "Did anyone take photos?" Yeep asked. Wang nodded and handed us a phone. "A tourist took this." The photo was blurry and slightly shaky, taken in haste at night, but clear enough to show what Wang had described. A line of paper dolls standing neatly along the sidewalk. They looked like traditional dolls used in ceremonial offerings, made of paper with simple faces drawn in black ink and wearing red bibs. "What about the burn cases?" I asked. 5 victims, all with second-degree burns on their faces, necks, and hands, Wang replied. They described feeling as if a flamethrower had been aimed at their faces. They all said burning paper fragments fell from the sky, but when they touched the skin, they burned much more intensely than ordinary paper. Yeep and I decided to split up to investigate. She would go to the hospital to examine the burn victims, while I would walk along the street to look for clues about the origin of the paper dolls. I went from shop to shop, asking about the types of paper dolls sold in the area. Most shopkeepers knew nothing about the incident or were reluctant to talk about it, a sign that they feared negative impacts on their business. Finally, I came to a small shop at the end of the street, the Fu-to-Paper effigy shop, where an old man, about 80, sat on a chair in front of the door, smoking a traditional long pipe. "Hello," I greeted him, introducing myself. "I'm investigating the paper dolls that appeared last night." The old man looked at me with wise eyes. "Ah, the spirit children, they've returned." "Spirit children?" I asked, curious about the term. "Soul baby dolls," he explained, his voice deep and raspy. "An ancient term for paper dolls made to represent lost children. They are burned in ceremonies so the souls of the children can find their way to the afterlife." "Do you know where these dolls came from?" The old man looked around carefully, then lowered his voice. "There's a workshop at the end of the alley behind my shop, Hong Fuck Workshop. They've been making paper effigies for over 50 years, but recently they started producing a special type of doll, much more expensive than usual. People say those dolls have more spirit. More spirit, what does that mean? People say that when those dolls are burned, the lost loved ones can truly feel the affection of the living. But, he paused, looking around again. I've been in this business my whole life, and I know no paper can have such spirit. Unless. Unless what, sir? Unless they mix something into the paper pulp, something that shouldn't be used. I thanked the old man and followed his directions through a narrow alley behind the shop. The alley was dark and damp, flanked by old brick walls covered in green moss. At the end of the alley was a rusted iron gate with a faded sign, Hong Fuck Paper Effigy Workshop. No entry for outsiders. I knocked, but no one answered. After several attempts, I decided to push the door, and to my surprise, it wasn't locked. Inside was a large space with a high ceiling, once a warehouse. The space was divided into different areas, one with large vats of wet paper pulp, another with drying racks for the paper, and an area with long tables where workers shaped and decorated the products. But the strange thing was that no one was there, even though the workshop was clearly still operating. Some trays of paper pulp were still wet, and unfinished paper effigies lay on the work tables. The air was heavy with the smell of new paper, glue, and another scent sweet and slightly metallic, almost like blood. I moved deeper into the workshop and discovered an area separated by plastic curtains. Pushing the curtains aside, I entered a smaller room with a large furnace in the center. Around the furnace were dozens of paper dolls identical to those in the photo, about 30 cm tall, wearing red bibs with simply drawn faces. As I approached to examine the dolls, I heard a sound behind me. Turning around, I saw a middle-aged man standing at the door, holding a metal bucket. "You're not allowed in here," he said, his voice cold. "This is a private area." I introduced myself as a police officer and asked about the dolls. "We're investigating a strange incident involving paper dolls just like these." The man, who introduced himself as Zhang Wing Hing, the workshop owner, seemed surprised. "I don't understand what you mean. These are just ordinary paper dolls used in the Ghost Festival ceremonies." "Then why are they sold at a much higher price than usual? And why do people say they have more spirit?" Mr. Zhang frowned. "That's just marketing. They're made more carefully with higher quality paper." I noticed he kept glancing towards a small door in the corner of the room. "What's in that room?" "Just storage," he quickly replied. "Nothing important." But the anxiety on his face made me suspicious. I walked towards the door, and although Mr. Zhang tried to block me, I managed to open it. Inside was a small room with a long table in the middle. On the table were metal trays containing a cloudy white liquid, and beside them were thin sheets of skin stretched on wooden frames. "What is this?" I asked, feeling a chill run down my spine. Mr. Zhang remained silent, his face pale. I approached the sheets of skin and realized with horror that it wasn't animal skin. It was human skin, more precisely, infant skin, thin and almost translucent. "Mr. Zhang," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "you need to explain this right now." After a tense interrogation, Mr. Zhang finally confessed. His workshop had faced financial difficulties in recent years as fewer people bought traditional paper effigies. A specialist from mainland China had offered a way to make his products more special, mixing dried and ground infant skin into the paper pulp. This fetal skin was collected from illegal abortion clinics in the area, where doctors sold the byproducts to anyone who paid enough. But this was just an improvement in materials, Mr. Zhang rationalized, his voice trembling. It made the paper more durable and burned better. "So what about the dolls that moved on their own in the street?" I asked. "How do you explain that?" Mr. Zhang shook his head, genuinely confused. "I know nothing about that. They're just ordinary paper dolls, albeit with some special components." I called Yeep and requested assistance. When she arrived, she examined the fetal skin and confirmed it was indeed human tissue. "This is probably why the victim's burns were much more severe than usual," Yeep explained. "Human tissue, especially skin, contains fats and proteins that can increase the temperature when burned. When these dolls are burned, they would burn much hotter than ordinary paper." But that still didn't explain how the dolls moved on their own and lined up on the street. Master Wang was called in, and after examining the dolls, he offered a disturbing explanation. This is a phenomenon called soul-bound paper effigies, he explained. When organic material from the deceased, in this case, fetuses, is used to create paper effigies, it can create a life-death bond between the object and the soul of the lost one. And in special times like the Ghost Festival, when the boundary between worlds thins, these souls can temporarily possess the objects created from their body parts. So the moving dolls were the souls of unborn fetuses looking for something. Master Wang said, perhaps their parents, or a place to go, or simply recognition that they once existed. I looked back at the inert paper dolls on the table, and for the first time, I no longer found them terrifying. Instead, they became heartbreaking, symbols of lives that never had a chance to begin, seeking connection in a world that had forgotten them. What about the burns? Yeep asked. Why did the dolls attack people? They were enraged, Master Wang replied. When Zhang began burning his old stock to make space for new production for the Ghost Festival, he inadvertently released the spirits attached to them. But instead of being able to move on, they became trapped in this world. And in their anger, they returned as burning paper fragments to attack anyone they encountered, perhaps because they couldn't distinguish who caused their suffering. Mr. Zhang was arrested on multiple charges, from illegal handling of human tissue to causing grievous bodily harm. His workshop was shut down, and all remaining paper dolls were collected and cremated in a special ritual performed by Master Wang, with the aim of freeing the trapped souls. That night, as the ritual took place, witnesses reported seeing dozens of small blue flames rise from the bonfire, hovering in the air for a moment, then ascending into the sky and disappearing, as if the tiny souls had finally found their escape. The Ghost Festival that year passed without further strange incidents. But since then, many shops in Sai Kung have begun a new tradition. They create special paper dolls to give away for free to women who have had abortions or miscarriages. These dolls, made entirely from ordinary paper, are burned in a separate ritual to help mothers find reconciliation with the children they never knew. And occasionally, on subsequent Ghost Festival nights, a solitary paper doll can still be seen standing at a street corner, as if waiting for someone to acknowledge its presence and take it home. Chapter 14. As autumn 1994 slowly transitioned into winter, Hong Kong experienced particularly cold air masses from the north. Biting winds swept through the city, bringing freezing air from the mainland. In this context, a series of mysterious deaths occurred in the new territories, specifically around the Tin Yi Temple, an ancient temple situated next to a gigantic banyan tree that had stood for hundreds of years. The case began when a man named Wang Wing-tak was found dead in his apartment. The death initially appeared to be natural. There were no signs of struggle, no wounds, and he seemed to have died in his sleep. But during the autopsy, forensic doctors discovered something strange. His skin had a pale greenish tint, and his tissues were still soft and fresh, despite being at least 48 hours post-mortem. What made the case of interest to Unit S was the discovery by a local police officer. Around Mr. Wang's neck was a thin red silk ribbon, and in his apartment, they found a debt collection letter from a man named Lam Jiabao, a notorious moneylender in the area. Chief Inspector Leung assigned the case to me. Tran, this is the third case in the past 2 months. 3 men, all connected to Lam Jiabao, all died with the same strange symptoms: green skin, fresh tissue, and a red silk ribbon around their necks. So this is a serial murder case? I asked. Possibly, but the method is unconventional. There are no signs of poison in the victim's blood. In fact, the official cause of death is respiratory failure due to exposure to a potent plant toxin, formaldehyde. Formaldehyde, as in embalming fluid. That's right, but its source has not been identified. And there's another thing: all 3 victims were found with a banyan leaf in their shirt pockets. I began the investigation by looking into Lam Jiabao. He was a notorious moneylender in the new territories, lending money at exorbitant interest rates and known for his ruthless collection methods. However, on paper, he was the owner of a legitimate financial company, Tin Yi Finance, with its main office located near Tin Yi Temple. When Dr. Yeep and I arrived at Lam's office, we were greeted by the man himself, a man in his 50s wearing an expensive suit, with slick black hair combed back and a large gold ring on his pinky finger. "Inspector Tran," he smiled, but his smile didn't reach his cold eyes. "I heard about your visit. Please have a seat, tea." "No, thank you," I politely declined. "Mr. Lam, we are investigating the deaths of 3 of your clients, Wang Guing Tak, Chan Min Quan, and Li Jiahui." "Ah, how regrettable," Lam said, feigning sadness. "I heard about their tragic deaths, but I don't understand why you've come to me." "All 3 owed you large sums of money, didn't they?" "They were clients of my company, yes, but we have hundreds of clients, Inspector. Unfortunately, people can still die even when they're in debt. The strange thing is, all 3 died in the same unusual manner, and all were found with a banyan leaf in their pockets." When I mentioned the banyan leaf, I noticed a flicker of hesitation in Lamb's eyes. It was fleeting, just for a second, but enough for me to know that it meant something to him. "Banyan leaves, how peculiar," he said, his voice still calm. "I know nothing about that, perhaps a coincidence." "Mr. Lam, do you know about the large banyan tree next to Tin Yi Temple?" Yeep suddenly asked. "Of course," Lam replied. "Everyone who lives in this area knows it. It's an ancient tree, perhaps over 300 years old, a famous landmark." "And do you know that there are currently over 40 red silk ribbons on that tree?" Yeep continued. Lam was silent for a moment before replying. "I'm not in the habit of counting decorations on trees, Dr. Yeep. But yes, that tree has some ribbons. It's part of a local tradition. People tie red ribbons on the tree for good luck." We didn't get any more useful information from Lam. As we left his office, Yeep and I decided to visit Tin Yi Temple and the famous banyan tree. The temple was located on a small hill about a kilometer from Lam's office. It was a small temple in traditional Chinese architecture with a curved roof and red pillars. Next to the temple was the banyan tree, a giant tree with a trunk so large it would take 3 adults holding hands to encircle it. Its aerial roots hung down from the branches, forming a complex labyrinth of trunks, branches, and roots. And just as Yeep had said, dozens of red silk ribbons fluttered in the wind from the banyan tree's branches. They were tied at different heights, some close to the ground, others so high they required binoculars to see. An old man was sweeping leaves around the base of the tree. He introduced himself as Chan Jia Ming, the temple keeper. "Can you tell us about the ribbons on the tree?" I asked. The old man looked around carefully before replying. "They're called debt-binding ribbons. It's a local tradition." "What tradition?" "When a person borrows money and cannot repay it, the moneylender will tie a red ribbon onto the banyan tree with the debtor's name written on it. The higher, the better. This is said to exert spiritual pressure on the debtor, urging them to repay the debt." "Is Lam Jia Bao the one tying these ribbons?" Yeep asked. The old man hesitated but finally nodded. "He and his people, they've been doing this for years, but recently," he paused. "Recently what?" I asked. "Recently, when a ribbon is tied, the debtor often suffers misfortune. Some get sick, some have accidents, and recently some have died." The old man showed us the back of the banyan tree, where a small altar with burning incense stood. On the altar was a small statue of the tree god, a local deity believed to reside in ancient trees. "Local people believe this banyan tree has a spirit," the old man explained. "An ancient and powerful spirit, and when these ribbons are tied with ill intent, the tree god will know and sometimes intervene." Feeling something wasn't right with this explanation, I decided to take leaf samples from the banyan tree for testing. As I approached the trunk, I smelled a strong, unpleasant chemical odor, almost like formaldehyde, mixed with the natural plant scent. I also noticed that the banyan bark exuded a clear, sticky resin, like sap. When I touched it with my gloved fingertip, of course, I felt a slight burning sensation. Yeep took samples of both the leaves and the resin for laboratory analysis. We also photographed all the ribbons on the tree and, with the help of binoculars, recorded the names written on them. Back at Unit S, we checked the list and found that the 3 most recent victims all had their names on the highest ribbons tied on the tree. Yeep's analysis results further confirmed our suspicions. The banyan leaves contained an unusually high concentration of formaldehyde, a substance naturally present in many plants but usually in very low concentrations. In this case, the concentration was so high that prolonged exposure could cause asphyxiation. But how did the victims get exposed to enough leaves to cause death? I wondered. All three were found in their homes, far from the banyan tree. Master Wang, who had been called in to consult on the spiritual aspect of the case, offered a disturbing theory. "This is a form of living debt curse," he explained. "In folklore, there's a legend about using ancient trees, especially banyan trees, as a tool to enforce spiritual contracts. When a ribbon with someone's name is tied to the tree, it creates a link between that person and the tree. The higher, the stronger the link." "But how does that lead to death?" Yeep asked. "This banyan tree is special. It's very old and has absorbed a lot of resentment from the ribbons over the years. This type of tree also naturally secretes formaldehyde, and with its age and size, the quantity is even greater. The resin contains this toxin and can be directed to specific targets." "You're saying this tree is killing people?" I asked, unable to hide my skepticism. Master Wang shook his head. "Not the tree, but the one controlling it. I believe someone, perhaps Lam Jiabao, knew about the tree's toxic properties and used it as a weapon. By collecting the tree resin, they could create a powerful and undetectable poison. And the banyan leaf in the victim's pockets? A symbol, a sign for others to see and know that this is the consequence of not paying debts. A warning." We continued to investigate and discovered that the three victims had all received a gift before their deaths: a special bottle of wine, supposedly a reconciliation gift from Lam Jiabao. According to their families' testimonies, they all drank that wine before symptoms appeared. With a search warrant, we checked Lam's office and home. In a secret room in his house, we found evidence: dozens of small glass bottles containing banyan tree resin, along with detailed notes on how to mix it with wine to create a deadly but hard-to-detect poison. We also found a ledger with the names of people who owed Lam money. Some were crossed out, matching the deceased. Next to each name was a number, representing the height at which their ribbon was tied on the tree. The higher the priority for punishment. Lam Jiabao was arrested and eventually confessed that he had learned this art from an old man in rural Guangdong, who had taught him how to use the ancient banyan tree as a tool to punish those who didn't pay their debts. "The resin kept them fresh," Lam confessed during interrogation. "It preserved their bodies, making it hard for their families to realize something was wrong until it was too late. And their souls, it kept them close to the tree so they could witness what happens to others who don't pay their debts." Lam was convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. However, the true extent of his activities was never disclosed to the public. Authorities worried that it would cause a wave of panic about black magic and charms. The banyan tree at Tinyi Temple was cordoned off and later cut down, officially due to plant disease and public safety concerns. The ribbons were removed and cremated in a special ritual performed by Master Wang to free any spirits that might still be bound to them. But even after the tree was felled, local residents still reported that on moonless nights, they could see the shadow of a gigantic banyan tree cast on the ground. And in the wind, they could hear the rustling of red ribbons that no longer existed. For me, the Tinyi hanging banyan tree case was a reminder that even seemingly harmless cultural traditions can become dangerous tools in the hands of those willing to exploit the fears and superstitions of others. And that sometimes, the most real threats don't come from the other side, but from human greed and cruelty itself. Chapter 15. In early spring of 1995, as Hong Kong gradually prepared for the impending changes, I received a strange case in the Sha Tin Industrial Estate, an isolated area located in the Eastern New Territories, home to many factories and workshops. The incident began when an inspector from the Labor Department conducted a surprise inspection at a tannery named Jia Yihing and discovered that many workers had disappeared over the past few months, leaving no trace. According to the workshop's records, the number of workers remained unchanged, but when he conducted a physical check, many names on the list could not be found. Under pressure from the inspector, the workshop foreman, Mr. Liu Mingquan, claimed that those workers had resigned and returned to mainland China. But when the inspector requested to see the resignation papers, Mr. Liu could not provide them. And even stranger, when the inspector contacted the families of some of the resigned workers, they confirmed that they were still receiving monthly wages from these relatives, although they could not contact them directly. The case became even more suspicious when the inspector discovered that the workshop was producing high-end leather for a famous handbag brand. The leather dyeing process was carried out using a special procedure, creating a distinctive natural red color, a vibrant red almost like blood. When he saw the finished leather samples, the inspector contacted Unit S, and Chief Inspector Leung assigned the case to me with a worried reminder. "Tran, I have a bad feeling about this case. Anything involving leather and natural red color is not a good sign." I went to the Jia Yihing workshop on a drizzly morning, accompanied by Dr. Yip, who would handle the scientific analysis, and an inspector from the Labor Department, who had discovered the case. The workshop was located in an old, 5-story industrial building, separated from other structures by a vacant lot. A pungent chemical smell assaulted our senses as soon as we entered the building. It was a mixture of animal hide, tanning chemicals, and another unpleasant metallic odor that I couldn't identify. Mr. Liu Mingquan, a man in his 50s with a gaunt face and cold eyes, greeted us in his office on the first floor. He showed no signs of concern about the investigation, even offering to give us a full tour of the workshop. "As I explained to the previous inspector," Mr. Liu said with a patient, somewhat forced tone, "those workers resigned and returned to the mainland. We've hired new ones. The lack of paperwork is just an administrative oversight." "Then why are their families still receiving wages?" I asked. "I suppose they found new jobs on the mainland and sent money back," Mr. Liu shrugged. "That's not our business." He led us on a tour of the workshop, starting from the raw material reception area, where freshly slaughtered animal hides were brought in. Then came the tanning area, where the hides were chemically treated to remove fat and hair and prepared for the dyeing process. When we reached the dyeing area, I noticed something strange. The large dyeing vats were sealed with heavy metal lids, unlike the usual open vats in tanneries. "Why are the dyeing vats sealed?" I asked. "That's part of our special process," Mr. Liu explained. "The special natural red color needs to be developed in an environment without light and air." "Could you open one for us to see?" Yip asked. Mr. Liu hesitated for a moment but finally nodded. He gestured to a nearby worker who brought a large wrench to open the bolts holding the vat lid. When the lid was opened, a pungent odor emanated, a metallic, foul smell that any police officer would recognize, the smell of blood. I looked into the vat and saw a dark red solution with a blood-like consistency. Pieces of leather were submerged in it, gradually absorbing the color. "What is this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Lime water mixed with natural dyes," Mr. Liu quickly replied. "It smells a bit unpleasant, but it creates the perfect red color our customers demand." Yip, unconvinced, discreetly took a sample of the dyeing solution when Mr. Liu wasn't looking. We continued our tour, passing through the drying and finishing area where the dyed leather sheets were stretched to dry, then further processed to create different textures and finishes. I noticed that the finished leather had a peculiar red color, not the ordinary red of chemical dyes, but a deep, rich red, almost like fresh blood. And when I touched a finished leather sheet with gloves, of course I felt it had a strange texture, unnaturally soft and elastic, almost like living human skin. When we completed the tour, I asked where the workers slept. Mr. Liu explained that most workers lived in a dormitory on the 5th floor of the building, especially migrant workers from remote parts of mainland China who had no families in Hong Kong. I asked to visit the dormitory, and although Mr. Liu seemed reluctant, he led us up there. The dormitory consisted of a long corridor with small rooms on either side, each with 2 to 4 beds. Mr. Liu said there were 40 workers at the workshop and about 30 lived in the dormitory. But when we did a quick check, only about 15 rooms showed signs of occupancy clothes, personal belongings, and the like. "Are there others?" I asked. "They might be working different shifts," Mr. Liu explained. "We work 24/7, divided into 3 shifts." As we left the workshop, Yip sent the dyeing solution sample to the police laboratory for analysis. The results came back a few hours later. The solution contained a large amount of human blood mixed with lime water and some enzymes from human intestines. "This isn't just ordinary blood," Yeep explained when we met with Chief Inspector Leung. "This is menstrual blood, collected and processed in a special way. In traditional Chinese medicine, menstrual blood is considered to have special powers, and in some dark rituals, it's used to animate inanimate objects and create vessels for spirits." "But here it's used to dye leather," Leung said. "Why?" "The enzymes in menstrual blood can soften animal tissue, creating a texture almost identical to living human skin," Yeep explained. "That's why the leather felt so soft and natural." We requested a full search warrant and returned to the workshop that night with a police support team. Mr. Liu was not present, but we caught several workers performing a task they tried to conceal, processing freshly flayed hides. When we examined these hides, we discovered a horrifying truth. They were not animal hides, they were human skin, stripped from actual victims, then processed and dyed for use in high-end fashion products. In a secret room in the basement, we found what remained of the victims: flayed bodies hanging like meat in a cold storage room. Evidence showed that every 7 days, a new worker would be brought down here, killed, and flayed. Their skin was then processed to become raw leather, while the rest of their bodies were processed to extract blood and enzymes for the dyeing process. According to the secret ledgers we found, this process had been ongoing for at least 2 years, with a total of 40 victims, mostly immigrant workers from remote parts of mainland China, people who had no family in Hong Kong and were little known. Mr. Liu Mingquan was arrested at a hotel as he was preparing to flee Hong Kong. Under interrogation, he confessed that this was part of a special production process to meet the demand of some high-end customers who were willing to pay a very high price for leather that felt like living human skin. "Animal skin can never be as soft as human skin," he confessed, his voice chillingly cold. "But our customers wanted that sensation. They wanted the feeling of touching a living being when they held that handbag, so we gave them exactly that." When we asked about the victims' families still receiving wages, Mr. Liu explained that it was part of a long-term plan. Wages were still sent back, so no one would suspect that the workers had disappeared. "This can't last forever," I said. "Eventually, their families will want to see them. By then, we'll report that they had an accident," Mr. Liu shrugged. "A common industrial accident. There would be a small compensation, and life would go on." His coldness and calculations sent shivers down the spines of even seasoned police officers. Mr. Liu and his 3 accomplices were sentenced to life imprisonment. However, due to the extremely horrifying nature of the case, many details were not released to the public, only recorded as an ordinary human trafficking and mass murder case. The Jia Yihing workshop was shut down and later demolished. The land lay abandoned for years. According to local residents, the area remains haunted. On full moon nights, one can hear the sound of sewing machines and agonizing cries echoing from a building that no longer exists. For me, the Sha Tin Tannery case was a terrible reminder of how bottomless greed can turn humans into monsters. And every time I see an expensive leather handbag with a special vibrant red color, I cannot help but wonder about its true origin and what other dark secrets might be hidden beneath the glamorous facade of the high-end fashion world. Chapter 16. In August 1995, as Hong Kong entered typhoon season, an atmosphere of tension and uncertainty began to spread throughout the city. With many people contemplating their future as the handover date drew near, the Hong Kong Electric Company began major infrastructure upgrade projects, including strengthening the power grid system in the new territories to cope with summer storms and prepare for the coming years. This case began when an electrician named Lam Jia Gui was electrocuted to death while repairing a high-voltage power pole near the new territory's border. This death was initially considered a normal industrial accident, an unfortunate but not unusual incident in the power industry. However, when 3 other electricians were electrocuted, one after another, within the next 2 weeks, all in the same area, and under similar conditions, the circuit breaker had been tripped, but current still inexplicably flowed through the wire. The case was transferred to Unit S for investigation. Chief Inspector Leung called me into his office on a rainy morning. Tran, have you heard about the electrical accidents in the new territories? Yes, sir. 4 people dead in 2 weeks, all from electrocution. The power company thoroughly checked the entire system after the second incident. No technical faults were found. All safety procedures were followed, and still people died. I finished his sentence. That's right, and there's something else, Leung said, pushing a file towards me. Inspector Wang was at the scene of the most recent accident. He discovered something strange. I opened the file and saw a series of photos of the power pole where the most recent accident occurred. On the ceramic insulators, the white ceramic discs used to isolate conductors from steel poles, a strange symbol was drawn in red ink. What is this? I asked. Master Wang calls it a spiritraversal talisman, an ancient spell used to bind spirits to a specific location. According to him, this talisman is specifically designed to contain spirits that died from lightning strikes. But these electricians didn't die from lightning strikes. No, they died from industrial electrocution. But Master Wang says that in many folk traditions, electricity is considered artificial lightning, and there might be a spiritual connection between these two phenomena. I decided to go with Dr. Yeep to the scene of the most recent accident. Master Wang was waiting for us at the base of a high-voltage power pole situated in a wide field, with the hazy mountain range of mainland China appearing on the horizon. This area was part of the power pole forest, a dense network of high-voltage power poles running along the border, supplying electricity to both sides. Thank you for coming so quickly, Master Wang said, his face serious. I fear we're dealing with a much larger problem than I initially thought. Have you found more talismans? I asked. Not just talismans, he said, pointing up at the power pole. Look closely at the pole's structure. Yeep and I looked up. At first, I saw nothing unusual, just a standard high-voltage power pole with conductors, insulators, and a steel frame. But as my eyes adjusted to the sunlight, I realized that the steel frame had a strange pattern, an irregular lattice structure, almost like a giant talisman formed from the pole's very structure. Someone deliberately designed these power poles with a special pattern, Master Wang explained, a pattern similar to the spiritraversal talisman, but on a much larger scale. And this isn't just on one pole. I've checked 5 other power poles in the area. All have the same structural pattern. But how can this cause these deaths? Yeep asked, still skeptical. These symbols create a kind of spiritual channel, Master Wang explained. When there's lightning, the spirits of those who died from lightning strikes in the past can temporarily revive and travel along these channels. But instead of ascending, they become trapped in the power pole. And when someone touches the pole, even if the power has been cut, yin thunder a similar form of energy, but belonging to the other world can pass through that person's body. I was still not entirely convinced, but years of working in Unit S had taught me not to dismiss any theory, no matter how strange it seemed. How can we prove this? I asked. We need to examine the inside of a power pole, Master Wang said. If my theory is correct, there will be physical evidence inside the pole. With the help of the power company, we were given permission to open a section of a power pole, a removable panel on the lower part of the pole. When the panel was removed, Yeep shone her flashlight inside and cried out in surprise. Inside the power pole, embedded in the concrete, were bone fragments, bird bones and also small human bone fragments like finger bones and teeth. They were arranged in a strange pattern, almost like a primitive electrical circuit. This is a bone circuit, Master Wang whispered, an ancient method to create a conduit for negative energy. The bones of creatures that died from lightning strikes are believed to have particularly strong yin thunder conducting abilities. Yeep took samples of some of the bone fragments for laboratory analysis. The results showed the bones dated back 30 to 50 years, and many human bone fragments showed signs of lightning damage, a characteristic type of microscopic scarring on the bone surface. We also discovered that all these power poles were built during the same period in the early 1980s under the supervision of an engineer named Zhang Bailok. When we located Mr. Zhang, he had retired and lived in a small house in rural New Territories. Mr. Zhang, A thin man in his 70s with bright, intelligent eyes showed no surprise when we asked about the design of the power poles. "That wasn't my design," he admitted after some questioning. "I just followed instructions." "Instructions from whom?" I asked. "A group of people from mainland China. They said this design would help protect the power lines from lightning strikes, and it worked for almost 20 years. No power poles were hit by lightning, even though that area is one of the highest lightning frequency areas in Hong Kong." "So what about the bone fragments?" Yeep asked. "Did you know about them?" Mr. Zheng nodded, his face darkening. "I knew. They called it the bone marrow talisman. They said it would absorb the energy of lightning. I don't believe in such superstitions, but I was paid a large sum of money to follow instructions and keep silent." "Do you know the origin of the bone fragments?" I asked, feeling a chill run down my spine. I didn't ask, and they didn't say, but I heard they collected them from demolished cemeteries on the mainland, where many people had died from lightning strikes. Mr. Zheng also revealed that the talismans on the ceramic insulators were regularly redrawn, usually at the beginning of the rainy season each year, by a special maintenance team from the mainland. But this year, with the handover approaching, this team had not come. "The talismans are weakening," Master Wang explained as we discussed the findings. "And as they weaken, the spirits held within the power poles are trying to escape, but they can only escape through a conductor, a living body that touches the pole." That night, a major thunderstorm swept through the new territories. Dr. Yeep, Master Wang, and I returned to the power pole forest to witness what might happen. We attached thermal cameras and recording devices to several power poles and observed from a distance in an armored police vehicle. As the first lightning bolts tore through the sky, we saw an astonishing phenomenon through the thermal camera screen. Each time lightning struck nearby, the power poles suddenly glowed with a strange thermal pattern, not from the outside, but from within, as if the entire pole was emitting light from its core. And even stranger, the recording devices picked up sounds not thunder, but groans and whispers echoing from inside the poles. "They're waking up," Master Wang whispered, "the spirits trapped in the poles." As the thunderstorm reached its peak, a massive lightning bolt struck directly one of the poles we were observing. Instead of damaging the pole as expected, the lightning seemed to be absorbed into the pole. And on the thermal camera, we saw an explosion of energy inside the pole. And then, something unbelievable happened. The pole body cracked, and a grayish liquid, almost like liquid bone marrow, began to ooze from the cracks. As this liquid came into contact with the air, it evaporated into a thin mist, curling in the air like ghostly hands reaching for the sky. "That's yin marrow," Master Wang explained, his voice tense. "The essence of the trapped spirit's energy. It's escaping." We watched as the gray mist slowly dissipated in the rain, but the worrying thing, according to Master Wang, was that this was only a small fraction of what had been trapped in this power pole forest. After this incident, the Hong Kong Electric Company agreed to replace all power poles in the area with a new design without talismanic elements and bone circuits. The bone fragments found in the old poles were cremated according to appropriate religious rituals, and the ashes were scattered at important spiritual sites to help the spirits find peace. No further deaths occurred after these changes. However, electrical engineers working in the area still report that sometimes during major thunderstorms, they can hear whispers emanating from the power lines. And occasionally, they see thin gray mists rising from the new power poles, as if some spirits are still trying to escape. For me, the new territory's power pole forest case was a reminder of how modern science and ancient beliefs can sometimes dangerously intertwine. Technology may advance, but in the hidden corners of that progress, ancient secrets can still lurk, awaiting their moment to erupt. And as I look up at the high-voltage power poles sparkling in the twilight, I still can't help but wonder how many other secrets are still hidden within the modern infrastructure we take for granted every day. Chapter 17. The night of June 30, 1997, the last night of Hong Kong under British rule. At midnight, the British flag would be lowered and the Chinese flag raised, marking Hong Kong's return to China after 156 years of colonial rule. The entire city was in a state of tense chaos. The streets were packed with people, some celebrating, some protesting, and many simply wanting to witness the historic moment. Hotels were crammed with international journalists and VIPs, and Victoria Harbour, the heart of Hong Kong, was prepared for the largest fireworks display the city had ever seen. It was also my last night with Unit S, after 6.5 years working on Hong Kong's strangest cases, from the first one involving the Red Lantern VHS tape in late 1991 to the more complex cases in subsequent years. I had decided to leave. With the change of sovereignty, I had received an offer to work in Taiwan, where I could continue my career without worrying about the impending political changes. My final case began in a completely unexpected way. I was at the Central Police Station, finalizing the last paperwork for my transfer, when Chief Inspector Leung called me to his office. "Tran," he said, his voice more serious than usual. "I know today is your last day with us, but there's a problem I think you need to know about." "What problem, sir?" He pushed a thin file towards me. "In the past 3 days, we've received dozens of reports of human skin lanterns being seen along Victoria Harbour." Human skin lanterns? One of Hong Kong's most horrifying urban legends. According to tradition, these were lanterns made from human skin with human bones as frames. When lit from within, they emitted an eerie red glow and were believed to bring good fortune to those who possessed them, albeit at a terrible price. All the reporters said the same thing, Leung continued. At dusk, they saw red lights floating on the waters of Victoria Harbour, slowly moving towards the fireworks barges. Did anyone take photos? Leung shook his head. Only blurry shots of red specks of light on the water, not clear enough to conclude anything. So why do you think this is an X case? Because there's a rumor that during the handover ceremony, instead of ordinary fireworks, there will be a human skin lantern display, a display of death to mark the end of an era and the beginning of a new one. I was silent for a moment, trying to grasp the meaning of this. You think someone is planning to use real human skin lanterns during the handover ceremony? I don't know what to believe anymore, Leung sighed, but I know tonight won't be just an ordinary night. The boundaries between worlds will be thinner, not just politically, but spiritually. And I want someone from Unit S to be on those boats when the fireworks begin. I agreed to take the assignment, though I wasn't sure if this was a real case or just anxieties based on rumors during this tense transitional period. I contacted Dr. Yip and Master Wang, and all 3 of us were granted access to one of the fireworks barges that would be used in the handover ceremony. We boarded the boat at sunset, as the last rays of British colonial rule shone upon the waters of Victoria Harbour. The barge, a large and old vessel, was laden with all kinds of fireworks, from large rockets to smaller firecracker strings designed to create specific shapes and patterns. A team of fireworks technicians, mostly from mainland China, were busy checking equipment and preparing for the display. We were introduced to the team leader, Mr. Zhang Jiazing, a middle-aged man with a stern face and calloused hands from years of working with explosives. "We're just observing," I explained when Mr. Zhang asked about our presence. "We want to make sure everything goes smoothly on such an important night." Mr. Zhang nodded, but I could see suspicion in his eyes. "Everything has been checked and approved. No need to worry." As we walked around the barge, Master Wang used one of his special tools, an ancient feng shui compass modified to detect yin qi. The compass worked normally until we approached a large container at the end of the barge, simply marked, "Special effects, do not touch." As we approached the container, the compass needle began to spin wildly, and Master Wang frowned. "There's a strong source of yin qi in there." We tried to open the container, but it was tightly locked. As we considered our options, a loud noise from the front of the barge attracted our attention. One of the workers had been injured while preparing a large firework. In the ensuing chaos, as everyone rushed to help the injured man, I took the opportunity to find the key to the container. I found it in a nearby toolbox, marked with the same symbol as the container. With Yip and Master Wang standing guard, I quickly unlocked and pulled open the container door. Inside, instead of fireworks, were dozens of traditional red paper lanterns. Not the horrifying human skin lanterns of rumor, but just ordinary paper lanterns neatly arranged in racks. Just paper lanterns, Yeep asked, relief in her voice. Wait, Master Wang said, approaching to inspect. There's something not right with these lanterns. He carefully took one out of the rack and examined it. The lantern was bright red with traditional golden symbols painted on the outside. But as Master Wang looked closer at the paper, he saw that it was not ordinary paper. This is spirit paper made from human ashes, he whispered. Ashes of the dead, mixed with red ink to create a special kind of paper. According to legend, when this type of lantern is lit, the spirits of the dead will temporarily manifest inside it. But not human skin, I asked, still worried about the initial rumors. No, not human skin, but this is still a form of spirit lantern. Not as gruesome and disgusting as the rumors, but still spiritually potent. Yeep took a sample of the lantern paper for later analysis, while Master Wang continued to inspect the other lanterns. All were identical, made from the same special paper with the same type of golden symbols. These symbols, Master Wang pointed to the golden drawings, these aren't ordinary decorative symbols. These are liberation talismans, a type of charm designed to release spirits from an intermediate state. We also found a small ledger in the container with a list of names and dates. On closer inspection, we realized it was a list of those who had died in major accidents and disasters in Hong Kong during the colonial era, from the Great Fire of 1951 to the landslides of 1972 and many others. As we tried to understand the meaning of all this, Mr. Zhang discovered us. Instead of being angry as I had expected, he seemed resigned. I suppose you would find them sooner or later, he said, so I will tell you the truth. This is part of the unofficial handover ceremony, a special performance to commemorate all those who died during the colonial period and were not properly recognized. These lanterns are made from human ashes, Master Wang said. That violates many spiritual laws. Not actual ashes, Mr. Zhang explained. Just a small amount of ashes from public cemeteries where many nameless people were buried. Not enough to identify any individual, just enough to create a connection. Connection to what? I asked. The past, Mr. Zhang replied, to all those who died and were not remembered during the colonial period. Those who built this Hong Kong but never lived to see it return to China. Mr. Zhang explained that the plan was to release these lanterns from the barge into the waters of Victoria Harbor during the final part of the fireworks display. As they drifted, they would be lit from within by a special chemical mechanism, creating a spectacle of hundreds of red lights drifting on the water. This is not black magic or an evil ritual, Mr. Zhang asserted. This is a commemoration, a way to say that we do not forget. Master Wang carefully examined the lanterns and finally nodded. He's right, he said. This is not a dangerous ritual. In fact, if done correctly, it can bring peace to many restless souls. After much discussion, we decided not to interfere with this plan. Instead, we requested to participate in the process to ensure everything was done with due respect and care. As night fell and the handover ceremony began, millions gathered around Victoria Harbor to witness the historic moment. Fireworks began to erupt in the sky, painting the night with thousands of brilliant streaks of light. And then, in the final part of the display, as the Chinese flag was raised, we began to release the red lanterns onto the water. A famous personality at the handover ceremony remarked that this would be a rain of corpses, a genre in Asian ghost horror films. But in reality, this was a much more solemn ritual. As the lanterns touched the water, the chemical mechanism inside them was activated, creating a faint red glow from within. Hundreds of red lights drifted on the waters of Victoria Harbor, forming a spectacle that was both beautiful and ethereal. And in that moment, I felt a strange sensation, not fear, but peace. As if hundreds of restless souls had finally found their release, drifting out into the vast ocean, leaving behind a Hong Kong entering a new era. But as I looked closer, I realized that what I was seeing was not just lanterns. In the soft glow of the fireworks and lanterns, I could see faint figures, the faces and shapes of people hovering on the water. Not the terrifying human skin lanterns of legend, but real souls finally being released. I looked at Master Wang, and from his eyes, I knew he saw it too. Not a threat, not an omen, but a rare moment of reconciliation between past and present, between life and death. The next morning, I turned in my investigator's badge and left Hong Kong on an early ferry. On the deck, looking back at the city's skyline, now belonging to another country, I felt a sense of closure and a new beginning. The sea sparkled in the sunlight, and for the first time in years, I took a deep breath and no longer smelled blood in the wind. I don't know if what I had seen and experienced in the past 6 years was good or bad, a blessing or a curse. But I know that those cases changed me forever, and that wherever I go, I will always carry the secrets of Hong Kong, the city of brilliant light and profound darkness, where the worlds of the living and the dead sometimes intersect in the mist of a rainy night. And if you are reading these lines, please remember that these stories are not just fiction or reality, but something in between, like Hong Kong itself, a place existing between East and West, between past and future, between this world and the other. I am Chen Minh Khai, former inspector of Unit S, and these are my X cases.